Hey everybody, Ryan here from Music City Live. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Patrick Duffy. Patrick, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure to be here.
Patrick is a 9-time CCMA Design Award winner. Wow, that's a mouthful. Graphic designer, drummer, JUNO nominee, father, and apparently astronaut and everything else there is that goes into being in this business.
Well, there's only so many hats I can put on at one time.
Yeah, no doubt. And so tell me about, so I guess we should start off by saying that you're here because of our sort of mutual friend, Jay Allen, because Jay was on the episode 2. And I said to Jay after we were done, I said, who would you recommend to come on and talk on the podcast? And he goes, I know exactly who you should call. So thanks so much for coming on, man. And you've also worked with, we saw him today over at the other building, my dad, with the CMAOs, right?
Yep. Know him well.
Yeah. We were talking about the tour bus and all the fact that he made it your office for that one show.
It was very generous of him.
Yeah. So we worked sort of indirectly. You've worked with the company before and stuff, but this is our first time officially meeting. So yeah. So thanks for coming on. So talk to me about sort of early days. What does early days look like for you in music?
I mean, if I go back early, it goes back to St. Peter's Elementary School here in London.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're from here in London.
Yeah, I'm from Oak Ridge originally. Holla. When I was in grade 3, the Catholic School Board decided to conduct a bit of an experiment at the suggestion of the bishop, who thought that a classical education was maybe what Catholic kids needed in school, including music. So they conducted an aptitude test, I guess, musical aptitude test at the grade 3 level. And apparently I did well on that test. And so myself and 30 odd other kids selected from the London Middlesex school system were sent to St. Peter's, and every day was either stringed music instruction or choral vocal or music theory, which was all too much for me, really, going into grade 4.
Wow, that would be.
I really didn't get it. I thought my parents were punishing me by sending me to this school. I don't want to play violin. And that was, you were limited to, it wasn't like cool instruments like guitar or bass.
Oh, really?
It was orchestra. So initially I played violin, really didn't like it. Wasn't very good at it. So I switched to double bass, which apparently I was a good prospect for because I was tall and I had big hands. So I could do the fret work. I wasn't very good at that either, but I saw all of that as being sort of my ticket to rock stardom.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to be. From the earliest age, I was interested in music. I had an older brother and an older sister who were avid music fans, and it was kind of like the Beatles and the Stones rivalry. My sister liked the Beatles and sensitive singer-songwriters. My brother liked Zeppelin, Deep Purple, hard stuff, and the Rolling Stones. Yeah. So there's always kind of music playing in the house, and nobody in my house played an instrument or anything. Okay. But the house was full of music fans.
Absolutely.
And so that's I guess the earliest days, and I tried to turn that into all that theory that I didn't really learn into playing the guitar so that I could be a rock star. I mean, that was my primary ambition.
That was the dream.
That was the dream, but it didn't work out because I couldn't figure out how to play the guitar. And I had a best friend with whom I was, and so by this time, my family had moved from London to Glencoe, which is kind of the Jay Allen connection.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Jay's going to get a lot of mileage out of this today, probably. He'll love that. So I had met this kid who lived across the road. He played keyboard, and he became my best friend, my lifelong best friend. And he said, why do you want to learn how to play the guitar? There's guitar players every time you turn the corner, but there's nobody who plays the drums. And if we're going to have a band, we need a drummer. So why don't you do that? And how hard could it be? Now, anybody who plays the drums knows that it's a little bit more difficult, but I suspect a lot of people start from that position.
There's actually, I've heard of another person almost in that same situation.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Where they ended up becoming a drummer because that's what was needed in the band.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing.
So then the next obstacle, of course, was I needed a kit. And we just happened to know a guy at school who had thought that playing the drums would be easy, but it turned out not to be. So he had this drum kit for sale, and it was $400. Which would be like $1,000 in today's money. And I'm like a 15-year-old kid. I don't have $1,000.
Yeah.
But my friend did. And he said, well, why don't I buy it for you and you just pay me back over time? I think it took me 15 years. But he was in no hurry to get the money back. He was just excited that I had drums and we could have a band.
Absolutely.
So that's the beginning of it. So this is like I'm 15 years old and I'm thinking, this is it. We just learned a bunch of songs, and at some point, I guess we become rock stars.
You talked about your sister and your brother. What was your musical influences back then?
Whatever whatever was on the radio. I mean, it was just top 40 radio to me. But I spent a lot of time driving around with my dad. My family was in the furniture business at that point.
Okay.
And so my dad and I did deliveries. I mean, I'm a scrawny 100-pound kid. I don't know what help I was really, but I think it was more like a bonding experience for my dad and I. And so we spent a lot of time driving around, and the radio was always on. Right. And my dad never played an instrument. He wasn't a particularly good singer or anything, but he liked music. He was into primarily big band and swing stuff.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Which is, was cool. And I still have a certain appreciation for that. And he liked to sing along to the radio. So, some of those earliest things I can remember is like singing along to Gordon Lightfoot songs, and
absolutely,
that's going to come up, I'm sure.
Yes, it will.
But so that was it in the early days. Is just, and I because of my experience going to St. Peter's, I sang in a choir. Not necessarily every Sunday, but a lot of Sundays I was at St. Peter's Basilica.
Oh yeah.
One of my early music teachers, there's a certain amount of when you're doing this instruction, you have to sing solo. And my instructor asked me to sing a solo at one point. I did. He said, "Are your parents British?" No, Irish actually. He said, "Because you sing with a pronounced British accent."
Wow.
So I don't know. I think that was just the influence of hearing a lot of British music and thinking, well, that's how you're supposed to sing.
Oh,
so,
wow.
And I became a record collector at around, 14 years old. Just like the idea of having this stuff. And I was also really interested in the artwork that accompanied the music.
Do you still have your record collection?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I had to cull it. I had so much that a lot of it had to be in storage.
Right.
And my wife, who's not a huge music fan and not a collector at all,
right,
who thinks it's a lot of things collecting dust. Why do you need these things that you never listen to? She agreed when we did a basement renovation recently to allow me a certain amount of storage.
Sure.
But she said, this is it. This is how much space you get. And whatever you can't fit into this space, you're going to have to sell. Mm. So I sold a lot of records over the last just 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
But I'm down to, maybe 1,000 pieces now.
Wow.
But it was a lot bigger than that.
Oh, jeez.
And I just realized maybe it was a good thing that she forced me to do this. Really thinking about the records that I really liked.
Yeah.
And so some of these go back to when I was 14, 15 years old. And records that I inherited from my dad as well. Some of his early big band swing stuff.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I have that stuff too.
I got some of that kind of stuff from my grandparents.
Yeah.
My grandparents came here in the 50s, and they had, I actually just brought a couple back from Florida. I was down in Florida at their place down there. And every time I go, I put a few in my suitcase because we don't have a record player down there. So I put a few in my suitcase. And one of the ones I put in was Glenn Miller.
Oh, yeah.
Was a 1960s copy of Glenn Miller and his orchestra.
Who's a Londoner, is he not?
No, you're thinking of, not Glenn Miller. You're thinking of Oh wow, his name escapes me, but it'll come to me in a moment.
I think we're thinking of the same person.
Yeah, of course. And so there was also a 1930s, 40s sort of one, and then there was another one. I can't think of what it was right now, but yeah, I got a bunch of these too from my grandparents that I'm going to hold on to too, because that stuff you don't just find that stuff kicking around just anywhere.
No, and it speaks to you. I mean, that's from the earliest age. There was records that really spoke to me.
Yeah,
like I felt like that song is for me, and I think I'm going to want to listen to this forever.
Yeah,
and I still am listening to some
Guy Lombardo.
That's yes, because I was just actually thinking the Guy Lombardo Bridge. There's still a
there
Guy
is,
Lombardo
and
Bridge.
there was a museum. It's still there, I believe. I haven't been to
like
it.
Springbank.
Yeah, they redid it. But yeah, so
Okay, I'm glad we solved that mystery.
Yeah, little old Londoner whose song gets sung everywhere in the world at midnight on New Year's Eve. But yeah, and it was weird too when I was growing up. The Guy Lombardo thing was weird because I didn't even, for the first, obviously when you're a child, you don't know, but and then I started growing up in the music business, and I was like, oh, this guy's from London, and this guy was from London, and Johnny Cash's manager was from London. And, yeah, so London, we're now the UNESCO City of Music for Canada, but there's a lot of interesting London ties, including yourself.
Yeah.
That a lot of people just don't realize came from here. So yeah, lots of interesting, cool stuff.
Well, and I feel like London. So I moved away from London, partly for music to join bands. I moved to Windsor. I was just saying to somebody earlier today. I moved to Windsor when everybody else was trying to get out of Windsor. But I moved to Windsor to join a band.
Oh, okay.
Well, partly there's a girl involved as well, but
there always is.
There's always a girl. There's a muse. So there was that, but the bonus was, there's this band that I can join. Mm-hmm. And so at the age of 18, I left home. As far as my parents were concerned, I think it was sort of like Patrick's run away to join the circus, which is what the music industry is to a lot of parents, I think.
And once you're in it, it can seem that way. Yes.
Yeah. And it is a bit of a circus.
It can be.
And that band that I joined certainly was a bit of a circus, but, and then I mean, the funny thing is it sounds silly, but I got kind of burnt out by the age of 22. I didn't want to play music anymore. I didn't want anything to do with music. It was a grind and I wasn't prepared for that. And so I moved back to London.
Okay.
Again, there was a muse, but, and I, as far as I was concerned, I didn't want to play. I just wanted to do something different. But I ended up getting sucked back into it, as anybody who's been involved in the business knows.
Oh, yeah.
You can try to walk away, but you'll end up stumbling right back into the pit. So when I moved back to London, that's when things really started to kick into gear. And I found myself on a path that's really kind of led me to where I am now. I didn't want to play, but I met some guys I was hanging out at Fryfogel's, or Fry's as we called it.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist anymore, long gone, right?
Didn't exist when I was around. I think it was gone just before I came on I was born, basically.
But that was the center of
it was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was
I hung out there for at least 4 nights a week and just liked being in that environment with a lot of creative people. There was a lot happening in London at the time. I'm trying to think of what year this would have been, like mid 80s, maybe.
Yeah, probably. So I was around, but I was really super young back then. But that would have been about right, probably. Yeah.
So I'm hanging out at Fry's, and I had met this guy a couple of nights earlier who just talking about myself. Oh, I'm a drummer, blah blah blah. And then I'm there on another night, and he yells across the table at me, "Patrick, didn't you say you're a drummer?" And he's talking to some other character, and that character comes over to me. "You're a drummer? I need you to play with me." I said, "Well, you've never even heard me play. How do you know I'm any good?" "Oh, I got a feeling about you. And you look the part," he said. So, which is, something I've learned over the years. Image is a big part of the industry. It's a big part of what I do. I mean, I'm sort of in the imaging business now.
Yep.
But I ended up playing with him, and it was like I was turned on to this completely different music that I didn't know anything about living in Windsor. Windsor's a bit backwards. I don't know if it's still that way. I haven't been in Windsor for a long time, but back then it was at least 10 years behind whatever's happening anywhere else. It was all classic rock. So anyway, I had enough of that. But I started playing this sort of punk rock new wave.
Sure.
I didn't know really much about it other than what I saw on TV.
Yeah.
But suddenly I'm listening to this really exciting music, and my whole style of playing changed. I didn't think I wanted to play at all, but I didn't know you could play stuff like this. And that's when my career, if we can call it, I want to do air quotes there.
Yeah.
That's when it kind of really kicked into gear. Just this exposure to this whole other world that I didn't really know was happening. And it started here in London.
Wow. What was the name of the band?
That band, it was one, couldn't settle on the name for very long, but for the longest period of time, the band was called Prayers on Fire.
Okay.
Which was a difficult thing to explain to my parents who were Irish Roman Catholics. Yeah. What, so you're making fun of religion? Kinda. Which was also the beginning of my, I don't know if I'm agnostic or an atheist. Not sure, but that's when that started.
Sure.
But there was a lot of really exciting music happening in London at the time. And there was a tendency for people to think that you needed to move to Toronto for that to happen.
I was going to bring that up at some point, but yeah.
I resisted that for a long time.
You did,
I thought, no, I don't want to be cliche. I don't want to just move to Toronto because that's what people say you're supposed to do. I'll go there when it seems like the time to go there. And so that did eventually happen, but only after things had and I didn't originally plan on going to Toronto. I planned to go to Montreal because that seemed exotic and not cliche.
Sure. Yeah.
But the guy, so I was playing in London with a guitar player in this band Prayers on Fire. That kind of fell apart. We decided, both of us mutually, that we need to go somewhere else. Toronto? No, we're not going to Toronto. Let's go to Montreal. And I thought the plan was that we were going to go to Montreal, check the scene out, check employment, check for apartments, and then eventually move there. I went over to his house one day and all of his stuff was packed up. And I said, it's a bit premature, isn't it? I mean, we haven't even gone to explore Montreal yet, which a place neither one of us knew much about, didn't know people there. And that was the whole idea. Just put yourself in that situation, which I've done many times in my life. Just, it's sink or swim. I'm not sinking. So, but no, he said he had decided that he was moving to England.
Oh, wow.
And there's another London connection there. There was a drummer friend of his who had been his friend before I appeared on the scene, named Peter Lambert, who I also went to St. Peter's with.
Oh, jeez.
And Peter was in England playing with a band called the Angelic Upstarts, who were kind of a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
And he had convinced Dave that this was the thing to do. Move to England. Don't move to Montreal. Don't go to Toronto. It's not happening in Canada. It's happening in England.
Right. Yes.
So anyway, he disappeared. That's pretty much the last I saw of him. Wow. And he was trying to encourage me to go to England, but I was not ready for anything that drastic.
Yeah, that would have been a big move.
So then I did end up in Toronto. But I ended up in Toronto because I was playing for a band from London who did a showcase in Toronto. That band the band was Metal, Mettle. I was pretty sure by the time we did that showcase, I'm not long for this band, but I want to do a showcase in Toronto.
Right.
So we did a fantastic showcase in Toronto, and I was in the bathroom, and the singer for a band called Kinetic Ideals, who I knew and I was a fan of, came up beside me in the bathroom. And although the etiquette, as we all know for men, is you don't talk to people in the bathroom, this guy starts talking to me. And he said, I've seen you at our shows and I just saw you play. Wow, you're a great drummer. How are things going with the band? I said, it's over. You just saw the last. I walked off that stage and I've left the band. I'm not going back to London with them. He said, great, you can come to Toronto and play with us. Well, this was fantastic.
Wow. Right place, right time, or what?
Yeah, just walk into a situation. Kinetic Ideals had already released several records. They had a profile. I was a fan. So I did move to Toronto and join Kinetic Ideals.
Wow.
So that was that.
And when was that?
Oh, late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
I'm really not good with
it's okay.
the time frame. It's all a bit of a blur, really.
Well, it's a blur in space when you're an astronaut too, Patrick. So yeah, it's all good. So one of the things I wanted to bring up was because I saw, I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw somewhere that you're a Tom Petty fan.
A big Tom Petty fan, yeah.
So I wanted to bring that up because I'm also a big Tom Petty fan. Probably not as big as you.
Oh, I don't know.
But
you're gonna grill me with dates.
No.
Albums.
No, not at all. No, I grew up listening to Tom Petty, and actually, I think a mutual friend of ours, Cam Grant, has a Tom Petty tribute band now, ironically.
Yeah. Another St. Peter's connection.
There you go.
Yeah.
A lot of connections there at St. Peter's, eh? And I got married at the church, by the way.
Oh,
St.
okay.
Peter's Basilica. But anyway, I started listening to Tom Petty when I was younger, and really got into it in the 90s. I would play a couple of his albums on repeat, and got really into it. And then I ended up going to I was in Nashville with my wife, and I hadn't seen Tom play. I had a couple opportunities to see him play up here. And for whatever reason, because I used to do lights for bands and stuff, I was on the road doing stuff and shows, and I never went to see him live. And anyway, my wife bought me tickets to go see him live in Nashville at the Bridgestone Arena. And so we went down. It was April 2017, I think, and we went down to see the show. And we were in town, and my brother sends me an email. And or a text message, and he's like, "Hey man, I just got an email. Are you in Nashville?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, okay. Well, you want to go to the Tom Petty sound check?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just at the hotel down the road." "Okay, well, here's the email address. Send an email to this email address." And turned out to be Robert Scoville, and I guess my brother, was connected to him online, and he sent out an email to all of his connections online saying, if anybody's in town, come on out to the sound check. And so I emailed him, and he got back to me saying, yeah, come on down, man. So I went down to the stage door at the Bridgestone, and he showed up. There he was. And, it was a group of us, a small group of us, and he brought us inside the Bridgestone, and we sat there and waited for a bit until the stage, they had to push the stage into place. It wasn't even in place yet. And then, because a bunch of us, he asked us, how many you got? You're all audio guys? Yeah. And so we watched him do his sort of tuning of the room, which was insane. He had all these measurement mics with wireless adapters all over the arena. And we were all like, wow, this is interesting. And then he went on to explain to us that, he's got under his console, he's got all the multi-tracks. He's multi-track recorded every Tom Petty show for decades.
Right.
And, they've got a bit of a reamping system. I'm not going to do it any justice, Robert. So, but he had a bit of a reamping system. He had the capability of basically playing back the last time that they were in any said venue pre sound check to make sure that everything was tuned just the way it was on the last show.
Right.
And I thought that was ingenious. I was like, wow,
yeah, this
is incredible. And he was demoing on that tour. He was demoing a new steerable line array from EAW, coincidentally, which now he's gone on to work with those guys. But anyway, that was an incredible experience, being able to hang out with him and stuff. I think I got a couple photos of that too, essay you can show. But yeah, so there's Scoville, and there we are there. So that's me and him, and the stage in behind us. And you can see down in the corner there, you can see that was the console, and then below all those racks of gear. So
which tour would this have been?
This is the 40th anniversary tour.
Okay.
This was the last tour.
Oh, all right.
So the point being, so we went to the show that night and that was the first time I got to see Petty live. And that was the last show he ever played at the Bridgestone Arena.
Oh.
But nobody knew, obviously, right? So at the end of the show, Robert, at the end of the sound check, there were some guitar picks kind of just sitting beside the console. And he says, "Would you like some?" And I'm like, "Sure." Again, not really knowing that this would be the last tour. So he gave me a bunch of them. He gave me a bunch of these 40th anniversary guitar picks. I still have them to this day. But anyway, that's my Tom Petty story, because, you know, I just thought you were a fan, so that'd be kind of cool to share that here. But
I mean, I love that. I think, you know, when people can have an interaction with an artist, when you can actually meet the people that you admire, and they don't turn out to be complete dicks, you know, that's a really exhilarating moment. It's happened many times in my life that I've met people. I never actually got to meet Tom personally, but I did have a moment with Tom that I like to tell the story about.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I was a fan. I think the first 2 records are probably the most played records in my collection.
Oh, wow.
I mean, Breakdown is the song you know, from the earliest I can remember listening to Detroit rock radio. I remember that song.
Absolutely.
And I think I don't know if Cam Grant's band plays it. I'm sure they do. It's a song that a lot of cover bands avoid because it's a hard song to play. From the drum standpoint. I mean, Stan Lynch nails that song. I understand from reading a lot about the band that he was a very erratic personality, but he definitely nailed that. And he's got a great groove as a drummer. American Girl is another Tom Petty song that I love.
I love that song.
The first 2 records are fantastic. But and then Full Moon Fever, as you know, when there was Damn the Torpedoes. I mean, there's a lot of great Tom Petty records.
Oh yeah.
I remember being a teenager driving around listening to that record over and over and over and over again. And then Full Moon Fever came out. By that point, I was managing bands, and I went on a Western tour as a road manager. I had forgotten I had a Walkman, you know, and I'd forgotten all of my tapes. So at one of the earliest stops on the tour, I bought Tom Petty Full Moon Fever on cassette and listened to that nonstop.
That's awesome.
It was my escape from the circus of the road. But then that tour, so I came back from that road trip, and I wasn't back very long before I got a call from a friend of mine who was a publicist for one of the big concert production companies at the time. She said, "Do you want to go and see Tom Petty?" Yes. When is it? She said, "It's tonight at the Gardens." And it was probably one of the last shows at the Gardens. I think.
That's cool.
I said, "Yeah, are they good seats?" She said, "Yeah, they're good seats because you're going to be sitting with all the record company people. There's an extra ticket. So you're going to be in the 14th row or something." And I mean, I just couldn't afford tickets like that in general. And I'm lucky enough working in the industry that I get to see a lot of stuff for free. But this was fantastic. And she's like, "You're going to have to sort of leave now to make the show." And just so you know, a lot of the record company people are going to be backstage, so you might be sitting in that row by yourself for a long time. I don't care. So I get there. This entire row is empty except me sitting sort of in the middle of it. Tom comes on, starts the show, and he's doing that thing where he's kind of looking out at the audience, you know, sort of checking things out. And then he gets to this row, and I can see him following along the row, this empty row, and then there's me. And he looks right at me.
Oh, wow.
And he kind of goes like this in the middle of the song. Like, "What's up?" And I just went, "I don't know, Tom." And he just winked at me and kind of nodded. And I thought, well, that's probably as close as I'm going to get to Tom.
Yeah.
But I'm going to remember that for a long time.
That's amazing.
That's my Tom Petty moment. I've had closer interaction with a lot of other people. Again, I'm just, you know, I'm not bragging. I'm pretty pleased that I've had all of these experiences and have discovered that, you know, I'm reminded that these are just normal people.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, they got to put on pants and they got to have something to eat and go to the bathroom.
I mean, some of them have egos and stuff.
Oh, some gigantic egos, sure.
But yeah, I think, you know, from growing up, I was really young when I got into doing shows, and, you know, I was really young. I was like, you know, 13, 14 years old, 15. And I was starstruck for sure. Like in those days, obviously I was a kid, but I really loved doing lighting. You know, I still do. Love doing lighting. So I was for me, it was all about the show, and I played the lighting console like an instrument, like I was one of them.
Well, I think that's an important part of the show. From the earliest age, for the earliest bands I was in, we always had lights. we had strobe lights, and we were lucky enough that we had a friend who was he was like a technical nerd. He was like the main guy on the AV club at school, and he, one day he said to us, his name was Todd Faubert. Todd, he said, the band could really use some flash pots.
Oh, yeah.
That would really make the show.
You asked me about that earlier.
And I was thinking about Todd as I was asking you.
Sure.
So he made us our first smoke bombs and flash pots. Now, I don't know if he knew entirely what he was doing, because the first time we set off one of his flash pots, we blew all the power out in the venue that we were in. But it made a tremendous explosion. And we made our own gunpowder, our own flash powder, because one of the people we knew just knew how to do that, because we grew up in the country.
Nice.
But we built our own light boxes and strobe lights, and we had a show. Like it was floodlights. We didn't know anything about par cans and whatever the pros used. It was a learning experience, but that was from the earliest time I can remember. It was about putting on a show. If you're going to convince, and I still feel the same way now, if you're going to convince people to get off the couch, spend even $10 or $50, the price of concert tickets these days, you better put on a show. Absolutely. And I'm annoyed if I go to a show and it doesn't look like they're really excited to be there, or they're not really putting on a show. And I think obviously lights are a big part of that, and they've been lights on whatever budget we had. It was important that there was a spectacle, a visual spectacle.
I remember I did a show in '97 for Radiohead here in town at Centennial Hall, and their lighting guy from the UK, Robert, at the time, he had a slogan. He said, "Without lights, it's only radio."
Well, yeah, makes sense, yeah.
And I've stuck to that for all those years. All those years I did lights. It was incredible. But that being said, I got to meet all these people in the 90s and 2000s, and they're just regular people. Mm-hmm. They really are. And they're really nice people. Like there's a lot of the people in the business in Canada anyway that, I've met that are great. So yeah, for me, I love doing lights. I'm going to do a show for my dad's got a blues show coming up at Centennial Hall. I'm going to do some lights for that and get back into it. But, that was another career ago. Now I'm on to different things with Music City Canada and all that. But yeah, the artists out there, you have to be, I've talked about it in other episodes. You have to be, if you're going to stay in this industry for a long period of time, you have to be humble. You have to have a good personality. People have to like you.
Well, my dad was in sales for a long time before he became an entrepreneur. And then even as an entrepreneur, it was about people skills. And he drilled that into me from the earliest age I can remember. And my dad's passed on for a few years now, but I still find myself recalling my dad's advice and repeating my dad's advice. And it was always about people. My dad told me that, he said, you don't even have to be the best. Well, you should be the best you can. He said, if whatever you do, be the best or don't bother. Get out of the way because somebody else wants to be the best. But you can get away with not even being the best if you have people skills. If you're a person that people want to talk to, want to deal with, they'll forgive a lot of your shortcomings if you're just a nice person. So that was drilled into me from a pretty early age too. And for the most part, I'm sure there are people who would argue, but for the most part, I've tried to be nice to people. Yeah. And if I was working with anybody, I was involved in management for a while. I learned that a lot of people don't have people skills and they don't understand, like in an interview situation, for example, I would have to coach artists that I was managing and say, you got to rehearse the things that you want to talk about. You're going to be asked certain questions. You need to anticipate what those questions are. So you have a sensible response, and you have to be aware that you're on air sometimes. You can't have these long, like even 2 seconds of, feels like 10 minutes. So, and you're not going to be known as a good interview.
Yeah.
So, but if you become known as a good interview, then you're going to be able to do a lot more interviews.
Absolutely.
Because people are going to talk about it and say, oh, you're going to talk to Patrick Duffy, Oh, he's a great interview. Well, I don't know if people say that, but maybe they will after this. I don't know.
Absolutely.
So think about what you want to say and have an intelligent response and make it interesting and learn how to tell stories. My family are big storytellers. That's
Nice.
just like a tradition in my family. And it was competitive. If you can't, if you couldn't tell a story that kept the rest of the family interested in a very competitive environment, well, you're going to be killed. So you got to practice this,
Well, it's all about stories in this business, though, right? I mean, it's a big journey. Like we talked circus earlier, but it's a journey, man. This if you can stay in this industry, it is a journey, and there's a lot of stories, a lot. And I mean, part of the biggest reason for me, why I do what people ask me all the time, why do you do what you do? Because I've worn a lot, like you, I've worn a lot of different hats, and it's the people. It always was the people,
Yeah.
and the stories that come from meeting and being with and exploring this crazy thing called life with all these other crazy circus type people.
Yeah. Well, and then you're the interesting person at a party, if there's a lull, you can tell a story. You're one of the people who's going to be for sure on the guest list. Oh yeah, we got to have Ryan because Ryan's always got lots to talk about.
Yeah.
I didn't mind being the center of attention in that situation. I liked being the center of attention. I was trying to my company name is Attention, which when I went to register the name, I thought, well, this is so obvious. Somebody's got this name already. They didn't.
Really?
So for $35, I registered the name Attention, and I was in business. And initially, Attention was a record label because I thought, well, nobody's going to sign these bands that I'm in, so I'll just have my own label. I'll put out my own stuff or stuff by other bands that I like. Then that was too much for me, so I just turned Attention from a record label into a design firm.
So let's talk about that. So graphic designer, and what are some of the acts that you've done work with?
This is where quite often I just draw a complete blank. So I've been rehearsing it. Probably the highest profile stuff. Gordon Lightfoot, Blue Rodeo, Tea Party, Tom Cochrane. If you were a country fan, Paul Brandt, Gord Bamford, Michelle Wright, Beverly Mahood, Jay Allen. And then I just run into a wall and I just forget. It comes up later, like I'll be driving home later and I'll think, why didn't I talk about? But Blue Rodeo, for example, that's a name that I forget to mention, and it's probably the band that I have worked with the most. I've done 17 records or 17 packages, I'll say, with Blue Rodeo.
And what's a package? What does that mean?
Well, mostly albums, but at one point, Blue Rodeo put out a special DVD called Stereo Vision, and it was a weird kind of they recorded this video at Greg Keeler's farm. He has a farm near Peterborough, I think, or Lindsay. Yeah. I think it's a bit of a hippie commune kind of a thing. Like he has a pet peacock that roams the grounds.
That's awesome. You should have put that on the album cover.
So I don't remember exactly what the occasion was or what the circumstances were, but they were doing some sort of something at Greg's farm, and they had built all these fake snowmen out of like Asian paper lanterns, and I was invited to it, but I didn't even go because I just thought it was weird, frankly.
Fair enough.
But it started because of a connection that I had at Warner. Okay. And I did one record. I think the first one I did was Tremolo, which goes way back. That went well, and I learned that pretty quickly that Blue Rodeo likes to have a family of people that they work with. Yeah. And I became a member of the family. And there was this formality that we would go through for every record when I started doing subsequent records, where their manager, Susan DeCarche, would call me and say, "Oh, hi, Patrick, just wondering if you're interested in working on another Blue Rodeo record." Yeah.
Sure.
Why would I not be? And it just kept going. And then when Jim Cuddy started doing solo records, I was the guy that got the call for that. And Greg Keeler had done even more solo records, some of them really obscure. People probably don't even know about all the stuff he's done. Because Greg just seems to kind of, I mean, he's an oddball. And I don't think there's anything wrong with me saying that out loud. He knows he is. I asked him one day when he came to my place, he was just so strange. I actually said to him, "What's wrong with you?" And without missing a beat, he just started rhyming off all the things that might be the reason there was something wrong with him. He had gone to India and, just kind of hung out with poor people for a month just to see what it was like. And he had discovered that he was adopted. And so his natural family was on the East Coast. He'd never been to the East Coast. He drove out there in his Jeep Wagoneer. His Jeep Wagoneer broke down on the way there. He had to say goodbye to it, but he kept the little part of the nameplate. When he tried to pull a Wagoneer off of the car, the only thing that came off was "gone." So he kept "gone," and he's attached that to the dashboard in his new car, and that became the title of his first album, his first solo album.
Wow.
And then he was doing some roofing at his place, and he fell off the roof, and and he said, "And I smoke a lot of weed."
As many people do.
So, and that was it. You know, he just kind of explained it to me very matter of fact.
Wow.
And, so anyway, so I guess I delivered. I gave the band what they expected. Greg especially is the one who kind of steers the artwork for Blue Rodeo, and Greg likes to collect people, other visual artists, musicians. I mean, if you see certain people opening for Blue Rodeo on a regular basis, it's probably because Greg really likes them. Okay. Jim, from my understanding, just kind of goes along with things. I think they like an old married couple. They've decided we're not going to fight about little things anymore. Maybe they fight about arrangements of songs. I don't know anymore. But anyway, yeah, that's that's probably some of the highest profile stuff that I did, and I really like the work that I get to do for them because they just sort of let me go. They don't micromanage the project. Greg likes to be involved. He likes to know, what are you doing? What have you not shown me? I want to see that stuff. But yeah, so that's some of the highest profile stuff I've done, I guess.
I noticed I was creeping some of the stuff online. You did an album cover for Amanda Stott.
Oh, that's another Warner thing. I mean, okay. I was just kind of one of the, what do they call it? Preferred suppliers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
In the record industry, there's like terms for everything, which I don't like. It's this lingo stuff, and everybody has a title. I tried working in the label system directly for a while. I worked for EMI as an art director. I didn't even know what an art director was when they offered me the job. So I just said yes. So many times in my life when people said, "Can you do this? Do you know how to do this?" I just said yes.
Yeah,
and then just figured it out later.
Sure.
So I did. I lasted for about a year and a half as art director at EMI, during which I think it's safe to say this now. I wasn't an employee, but I was an exclusive contractor.
Yes.
Which meant I couldn't work for any other labels.
Oh, wow.
But I did, under a pseudonym, or a variety of pseudonyms, one of which was Jean Doe.
Of course.
And
that's awesome.
There was people that just refused to accept that I could not work for them because I had an exclusive contract with EMI. But yeah, Amanda Stott. Yeah, that's. Do you know Amanda? Is it?
Because we worked together on the Kalen Porter tour. We were doing a bunch of American Idol stuff. Canadian Idol stuff when that was happening. And I ended up going on as one of the techs doing setting up lights and sound for all the Ontario dates for Kalen Porter. And she was the opening act.
Okay.
She's from Manitoba.
Oh, I thought she was East Coast. No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No. And no, from what I remember, that's where she was from. But anyway, but yeah, it was fun. She was fun, and she was just a simple thing. She was just her and a piano or something, from what I remember. But anyway, she was great. And anyway, so when I was looking through your stuff, I was like, oh, wow, that's quite cool.
Yeah, I think I did a couple of records for Amanda. I don't know if she did any more than that. But yeah, I would just get these calls, which is what led to the Gordon Lightfoot thing was just that I had done so much work for Warner. They knew what to expect of me. We would always go through this formality. Patrick, can you quote us on the Amanda Stott record? Patrick, can you quote us on the Paul Brent? It was the same quote every time. I just changed the name on it because I knew it would get approved.
So the Gordon Lightfoot thing, I mean, you touched on it earlier. That was, must have been a big deal for you.
It was a huge deal for me. I grew up, as I said before, listening to Gordon Lightfoot on the radio in the car with my dad. He's a Canadian icon. I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined, even as I did meet some famous people, worked with famous people, Gordon Lightfoot to me is like royalty. That's like meeting the king. And I got a call one day from my Warner contact who said, would you be interested in working on a Gordon Lightfoot record? Well, I'll have to think about it. She said, here's the thing. Gordon, he doesn't really like designers. He had a bad experience with the last one. So initially, we just want you to go and meet him and see if he likes you. Oh, wow. And see if you can get along. So I had a meeting to go and meet Gordon. He had an office on Yonge Street in Toronto. I don't know why he had an office. I guess he just liked to have a place to do business out of.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think he had probably had this office since 1970 something based on the decor, which never changed. So I went there, ostensibly just to meet him, to see if we could get along. I didn't know what to call him. Do I call him Gord? Can I be that familiar? Do I call him Gordon? Do I call him Mr. Lightfoot? So I thought, well, I'll just introduce myself and I'll see how he responds. So I get to his office. His assistant greets me, takes me and says, oh, Gordon's in there. I go into his personal office and he's standing with his back to the door looking out the window with his hands on his hips. It was a very sort of Gordon stance. And I had to do that whole like just announcing that I'm in the room. And he wheels around and looks at me and he kind of looks startled. And I stuck my hand out. I said, I'm Patrick Duffy. And he looks me up and down and he goes, so you are. Okay, I still don't know what to call him. Have a seat, he says. And it's like an interview. And he sits behind his big old walnut desk and I sit in the one chair. And so he says, so tell me something about yourself. I really felt like I was
really
being
was
interviewed.
an interview. Yeah.
And so I just started talking and I was probably babbling, which I do sometimes when I'm nervous. And I'm sitting across from Gordon Lightfoot. And in the middle of whatever I was saying, I don't even know what it was, he interrupts me. He says, are you a homosexual? I was so...
You can't even make that up.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, that's crazy.
No. I said, why? He goes, I don't mean any offense. It's neither here nor there. I'm just curious. And I said, isn't that how it starts? And he cracked up. And I thought, okay, I have him. I know I have him now. And I thought, I just have to remember that Gordon Lightfoot is a guy like any normal person. He has to put on pants in the morning and find his shoes. And he's just a normal person. And maybe that's what he needs, is for me to just be normal. And then he told me that he did not have a very good experience with his last designer. He said, I don't like people pushing stuff on me. You understand? And occasionally he got really kind of biting, Yeah. And I could sense that Gordon's an impatient sort of a person. I noticed that around this point that he was very fidgety and that his office smelled like an ashtray. And I thought, he wants to smoke, but he's just being polite and not smoking in front of me. So I finally said to him, did you want to have a smoke, Gordon? And he went, would that be okay? I said, hey, you're Gordon Lightfoot. This is your office. You can do whatever the hell you want. Oh, you wouldn't be offended? Will you join me? I said, well, I actually just quit. And I did. I thought this is going to be really hard because I would really like to have a smoke with Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah, right.
But I know he really wants one. So I learned about Gordon pretty quickly. He was very OCD. And he reached under his desk and he pulled out like an old man's briefcase, flipped the latches, opened it up. The only thing in the briefcase was a pack of smokes and a lighter. And like he had done it 5,000 times before, he took a smoke out, if you've ever smoked, there's a routine, there's a ritual about it. And he lit up and instantly he was calm again. And I thought, okay, this is going really well. Because now he's gotten the homosexual thing out of the way. he's, and it was fun. Like, he didn't say gay. He said homosexual. Anyway, then that became a standing meeting that I had. So it was determined by the end of, I felt like I had to say something. The hour came to a close, and he said, well, what shall we do now? And I said, I guess we just have to determine whether you like me enough to let me design your record. He said, oh, I think that's fine. So he said, I'll see you next Tuesday. And it became the regular thing. Every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, I went to Gordon's office.
Oh, really?
And I had to show him proofs. I could never just show him anything on a laptop or on a monitor. He didn't have a computer in his office. I had to print out proofs, and they had to be the highest possible quality proofs, which he told me, make sure that I charge him for this. I expect to pay for it, he said. And I thought, well, he's Gordon Lightfoot. He's got lots of money. And I had a standing meeting with him every Tuesday. And most often it was 15 minutes of business and then 45 minutes of just chatting.
Wow.
He asked me if I played an instrument. I said, yes, I play the drums. He said, yeah, I'm a drummer. I said, well, I don't know if you know this, Gordon, but you're actually a guitar player. And you're quite well known for that.
Yep.
He said, no, I played the drums. And he told me a story about when he was 18 years old and he faked that he played the drums so that he could join a friend's band who was playing in the Muskokas.
There you go.
Because he wanted to meet chicks, he said.
Yeah. See, there's all kinds of parallels between you two.
So then I don't want the story to go on too long, but ultimately he asked me if I would mind coming to his house to meet him. Would I mind? I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Gordon Lightfoot's house?
Yeah.
And I really felt like, okay, I want to say, I would never say I was a friend of Gordon Lightfoot's. I don't know that I had that familiarity, but I was friendly with Gordon and I know he liked me. And I hope I don't get emotional talking about this, but I really enjoyed going to his house. And the first time I went there, I said, well, where is it? He said, well, it's on the bridle path, like kind of impatiently. Like, don't you know that?
You should know, yeah.
And I said, okay, well, like where on the bridle path? He said, well, it's across from Drake's place. Like I knew where Drake's place was. Like I'd just been to Drake's, And he mumbled a number, which I wrote down, but then I realized I didn't write it down very clearly because I wasn't really even sure what he said. But I thought, well, I'll know where Drake's, I looked up Drake's place. That's what I did. I Googled Drake's place. Oh, okay, well, it's palatial, It looks like a subdivision. So Gordon's will be right across the road. Well, it turns out there's more than one place across from Drake's place. That's how big it is. So I pulled into this place and it was kind of I thought it was a bit fancy for Gordon Lightfoot. And, but then I noticed there's a folding nylon webbed chair sitting outside the front door. It's not really a porch. And it looked like something you'd have at your cottage in Muskoka. And I thought this is Gordon's place. Because who else would have, in this neighborhood, who would have an old nylon webbed folding chair? Absolutely. And when I rang the bell, I didn't really even expect Gordon was going to answer the door. I thought a butler, somebody else, but no, he answers the door wearing basketball shorts, but not like cool, like Walmart basketball shorts, and a t-shirt that said like Dr. Pepper on it from like 1975. His hair was all kind of stringy. He looked like hell. And he goes, hey, man.
He's in home mode.
Yeah, come on in. And I followed him in, and I was just kind of following him. And I didn't know where we were going. Like, I don't know if there's a special room we meet in or not. And I just kept following him, and we're going down this hall, and he turns around and he goes, I'm going to the can. Where are you going? I'm just following you. And he goes, well, you're not coming into the can with me. Go sit down in the kitchen. So I did. And, so many stories there. But anyway, this we had a regular meeting until we finished the record. And then it's sort of like we're done. And he says, well, what will we do now? I said, well, we're done. I guess that's it. Well, when will I see you again? He says. Wow. And I just felt really kind of touched by it.
Wow, yeah, that's intense.
And I said, well, I know I can come and meet with you again next Tuesday if you want. He said, would you do that? I said, yes, I would. Wow. So I did. And it seemed kind of silly, but it's Gordon Lightfoot. If he wants to meet with me, I'm going to drop everything and go and see him. But then I left and I realized this is silly. We can't keep doing this. I mean, it's I don't. I mean, in retrospect, maybe I could keep doing it. Maybe I could just have a regular meeting with Gordon Lightfoot just for fun. But I remember leaving. I'm driving away. He always came to the front door and he went out on the porch to have a smoke as I left. And as I'm leaving, I'm seeing him in the rearview mirror. And I had this. I mean, his health was not good. He did have to occasionally leave the room to go and huff oxygen. So as I'm leaving, I'm looking in my rearview mirror and I see him waving, and it's the last time I saw him.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy.
But I thought it's almost like a movie moment, you know? I felt like Gordon was saying goodbye to me, and my departure was just my goodbye, and that's it. I had a feeling at the time, this is the last time I'm going to see Gordon Lightfoot, and he didn't last a lot longer.
Wow, that's intense, man. Well,
anyway, I didn't mean to bring things down.
No. It's no. Thank you for sharing the story. That's incredible. I had no idea we would get that deep, but that's incredible. Thank you for sharing. That's amazing. I mean, and for it to come full circle from the time you were sitting in the truck with your dad, all the way to that. That's literally incredible.
Well, and as you know, I mean, Gordon could be really arrogant too. Like, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember saying to him. Because at one point he was doing one of his Massey Hall, you know, residencies for 3 nights or whatever. And I didn't want to go and see him because I had heard him sing and he was not in good voice towards the end. And I don't mean any insult if anybody's watching this and thinking, how dare you insult Gordon Lightfoot?
No, yeah.
He just was not in good voice. And I think the only reason people went to see him is just because he's Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
And I think there was maybe a morbid curiosity for some people too, like, how many more times are we going to see him? But I said something about, you know, you probably want to get down to Massey Hall and, you know, get yourself ready for the show. But I'm sure you have people that handle your guitars for you. He said, no, I tune my own guitars. And he had multiple, I don't know what, Martin 12 string, whatever it was that he played. He had multiples of that guitar so that when one did go out of tune, he just had another one, which he had tuned. I'm sure there's still probably a guitar tech that
somebody's handling the guitars.
Somebody took the guitars when he wasn't looking and fixed them up a little bit for him. But he was very particular about that. He didn't trust anybody else to do it, you know?
Yeah. That's incredible. I same kind of thing for me. I didn't, the last, Phil Collins did this last sort of run, and I didn't go, because, he was sort of sitting in the chair and I didn't want to remember him that way, cause I saw him on some pretty incredible tours. I saw him in Detroit and I saw him in Toronto.
Cause he could otherwise be very animated. Right?
Oh man. I remember I went to go see him at this, Palace of Auburn Hills in Detroit. And he just did laps where Phil was like running laps because the stage went like up and around the back. Right. And he would and it was Susudio. It was for Susudio. And they would just have this long extended intro. Doom, 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 doom. And he would just run and he would run and just kept running around in a circle. And when's the song gonna start? And then, they break into it and it goes. But yeah, man, animated, just super interactive with the crowd and just nailed it. And at that point, obviously, was still doing the big drum solo as well, right? And the drum duo thing that the two of them do. But yeah, that was one of the reasons I didn't go. And everybody sort of said some of the people I know that did go were like, oh, you should have went, because it was still really good. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to remember it that way. I don't want to remember him that way, right. And but ironically, because you brought up the London Gardens earlier, I don't know if you knew this, but that was London Gardens. Genesis played the London Gardens in London, and my dad told me this. And it was that show was the first time Phil Collins came out and sung lead.
Oh, I didn't know anything about that. No.
My dad didn't go. He told me he didn't go, but his high school friend at the time, Keith Tackerberry, went, apparently, with someone. And no one knew, but that was the first show that Phil Collins came out from behind the drum kit and sung vocals, was here in London at the London Gardens. Yeah.
I saw some great shows at London Gardens.
What did you see there?
I saw Van Halen on their first tour.
Oh, yeah?
I saw AC/DC on the Back in Black tour.
I didn't know that tour went to London Gardens.
Yeah, that was probably one of the best rock shows I've ever seen in my life. Well, that and the Van Halen show, you know, going back to something we were talking about, you know, meeting people, you know, meeting your idols and realizing they're just normal people. That first Van Halen tour, you know, I had heard the debut album and I thought it saved rock music. I don't know how old I was at the time, 17 something maybe.
Yeah.
It just, you put the needle on that record, and this probably sounds very quaint for people who've never actually listened to vinyl, but there was an emotional attachment to, you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
You put a record on, like you had to actually go to a store and make a conscious decision to buy this record.
I used to drive 2 hours to Toronto to go record shopping.
Well,
sometimes.
and I totally relate to that. And Steve Kane, who I mentioned earlier, who's the president of Warner, still an avid collector. Really? Oh, and his basement. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that I even collect records when I go to Steve Kane's. His basement, it's just it's polluted with records.
Well, after this, he's going to say, "What are you doing selling all your records?"
And he's got a jukebox, like an ancient Wurlitzer jukebox. I think it's a Wurlitzer. Where he plays 45s. He posts regularly, like when he changes the playlist on the and that's actual 45s. Like he doesn't listen to, I'm sure he listens to digital music, but anyway, what was the
Van Halen.
Van Halen. So I go off on tangents and I just get completely lost.
Van Halen changing
so
rock.
that record, just amazing record. And then, so, you know, any show, any big band that came to London Gardens, my friends and I were going. In fact, so I'm in high school at the time. We started the music club at my high school. Mm-hmm. What was the music club? Well, in one sense, it was just an excuse for me and my friends, who were also music fans, to get out of class by holding a meeting of the music club. There'll be a meeting of the music club this afternoon at 2:00. Oh, didn't that just happen to coincide with when there was a math test? Anyway, but what the other thing we did as the music club was we made regular trips to London. So we were living in Glencoe, 50 kilometers away. We would make trips into London to buy concert tickets. And if you were tight with us, then we would buy your tickets as well. And then, you know, slightly inflate the price as a service charge. We weren't scalping or anything, though. And we were just charging a service fee for having facilitated you having tickets.
There's a whole business around that now. It's called Ticketmaster.
Yeah. So, and I don't think Ticketmaster existed at that time. And this is the way you had to do it. You had to actually go and physically buy tickets.
Yeah. You know what? Until you just said that, I didn't even think about that. But I can totally see that.
That also just made you. It invested you emotionally in the experience of being a music fan. You know, you had to go and buy tickets. You had to go to shows. You had to buy records. You had to think carefully about what you're going to spend your probably meager disposable income on. Anyway, we go to this Van Halen show. It's insane. I mean, that was David Lee Roth in his prime. He became a supreme idiot.
Oh, yeah.
Just a cringeworthy embarrassment. Ask the rest of the members of Van Halen. But at that time, he was in his prime, like coming on stage with assless chaps on, you know, and a jock strap, doing flying leaps in the air. The band is like chugging booze on stage.
Taking it to another level.
The people in the audience created a bonfire in the middle of the floor of London Gardens with popcorn boxes, which I think was the only thing you could buy that was flammable.
Oh my goodness.
And probably all that butter and oil on the popcorn. The band noticed it, took note of it, like came out and saluted the crowd. Anyway, it's a fantastic show. My friend and I are over the moon. And it was a great tradition at the time to go to McDonald's on Warncliffe Road or Wellington, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I think that same McDonald's is probably still there.
They moved slightly in the parking lot, but
you know where I mean, right?
Yes, I do.
So that was the closest place that was open that everybody, I think, who had gone to the London Gardens to see a show would converge.
Well, they used to have a massive sign that you could see from the highway.
Yeah. And I don't know why McDonald's never seemed to catch on to coordinate more staff after a big show. But anyway, so we're standing in line, just waiting patiently, because what else are we going to do?
Sure.
And then I can hear this conversation happening right behind us. And I hear this guy go, yeah, I think it was like the third song. Like I cracked my knuckles open on the snare drum, on the edge of my snare.
Oh,
and I'm thinking, yeah, I've done that before. And so I just kind of turn around to see who are these, you know, musician types behind me. It's Alex Van Halen and Michael Anthony
Wow.
in McDonald's. Like, aren't you guys famous? Like, don't you have
after show food?
bring you food, you know? But there they are waiting in line. I just turned around and I looked at Alex Van Halen. I'm like, you're Alex Van Halen. And he goes, I know. Can I shake your hand? He goes, it's got blood all over it. And it did. He hadn't even washed his hands. He had dried blood all over his hand. You could see how he had cracked his knuckles open.
Wow.
And he shakes my hand, and I'm doing the whole like, oh, I don't think I'm going to wash this hand, for a week. And they were just perfectly normal guys. And they were like, did you guys enjoy the show? Yeah. Oh, right on, man. You guys play? Yeah. And it was just, that's another moment. It'll last forever for me.
Absolutely.
So, and it's all those little experiences, meeting people like that, and just seeing a great show at the Gardens or at Centennial Hall, Triumph, Saga, Max Webster. I ended up doing an album for Kim Mitchell.
Yeah.
I saw him in Max Webster before he was even Kim Mitchell solo.
There's Kim Mitchell.
Yeah. So that's, because it turns out that Kim's bass player, Peter Fredette, I think is his name. Peter was really good friends with the photographer who was my main photographer, who was my next door neighbor. And that's actually, Amanda Stott, the Tea Party thing, that's funny. And the Tom Cochrane thing, both shot by my friend, Rob Wayman, who's now retired from shooting. Bastard. Who am I going to use now? He was like my go-to photographer.
Oh, yeah.
So in my job, that's what as an art director, I often have to determine who's the photographer for this job if photography is not already supplied. So I might have to figure out, is Ryan the best guy? Is SA the right guy? Is Rob the right guy? Well, Rob was almost always the right guy because he's right across the hall from me. I met him when he was moving in. And it was one of those, so what do you do, Rob? He's like, I'm a photographer. Oh, yeah, what kind of stuff do you shoot? He's like, well, mostly corporate stuff, Fortune 500 sort of guys. But I like to do arty stuff on the side. Well, then I get a call. That was when I was working for EMI. I got a call one day from my contact at EMI. She says, can you find a photographer to go to the studio right now, to shoot Tom Cochrane? He's at Metalworks. And it's the last day of recording, and we realized we wanted to have sort of, the cliche shots of, the guy with one headphone on going, into a microphone, or the crew sitting at the desk,
Sure.
Listening,
intently.
So can you find somebody? Well, I don't know. There's that guy, Rob, right across the hall. So I just went across the hall. I put the phone down. Hang on a second. Put the phone down, knocked on his door. Hey, Rob, can you go to Metalworks and shoot Tom Cochrane for me? Sure. When? I said, right now. You got to put your gear in the car and go there right now. Okay. He didn't even ask me how much it was, what the budget was. Just okay. We didn't talk about money until he got back. and I love that. He was just, this was a creative thing to do. And I gave him one instruction, which was directed to me by the record company. Tom Cochrane does not like to have his picture taken. So don't, tell your photographer, don't ask him to pose. Just, it's candid stuff, just background. So I give this instruction to Rob. Okay, so he comes back several hours later. How did it go? He says, it went pretty well. I need to tell you something, though. I did ask Tom to pose. Oh, Rob. How did that go? He said, well, it didn't go well at first. Tom was really kind of put off. And he did say, I told everybody I don't pose. I don't like to pose for pictures. He's just one of those people who's uncomfortable in front of a camera.
Sure.
So, did you smooth it over? He's like, oh yeah. In the end, he went along with it because what I had done is I just set up a scrim with one light, and I just said, look, I just want you to pose. And this is back before digital photography. So I just said to him, can you pose for 24 frames? I'll make it really quick. Tom said, can I hold my guitar? Can I just pretend I'm playing? Because that'll just make me more comfortable. Rob said, yeah, fine. So there was 24 frames of Tom playing guitar against this background. Initially, everybody said, there was other shots that we liked. We're going to use these and these. Well, then apparently Tom saw these shots of himself posing in front of this scrim and said, I really like this shot of me playing guitar. He's kind of hunched over a little bit. And
That got
strung.
used.
It was the cover
Yeah.
of his Ragged Ass Road
Yeah.
album, which
remember
I
that.
designed. And so that was, I thought, I like this guy, Rob. He knows enough to push it. He obviously got along with the artist.
Got the shot, that's for sure.
He got the shot. So he became my main guy. And so when the Tea Party came up, I had already done one Tea Party, the first record they did for EMI, which was a re-release of a record they'd previously done, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Then they did the Splendor Solace record, which I got nominated for my first Juno. Did not win.
Congratulations on your nomination.
I've milked that. I'm still milking it, clearly. I've never received another nomination since then.
Really?
I've actually been a Juno judge, but I've never received another nomination.
Wow.
Although, it's funny how it's like the is it Broken Telephone where you tell somebody something,
Yep.
you tell somebody. Every time I go back to Glencoe, I mean, London's my home, but Glencoe is kind of my spiritual home.
Sure.
Because all my teenage years, my wild teenage years were spent there. That's where I met my best friend. That's where I started my first band. That's where I wrote my first song. Anyway, I go back to Glencoe, which I still do frequently. And I'm like royalty there because I work in the music business. And I'll run into some guy like in the John at the Legion who will say, "You've produced 14 records now for the Tea Party. You've won 19 Juno Awards or something." And I just go, "Yep." Yep, I did. Because it's not worth explaining it. And this is how they want to remember me. So I'm fine with that. But I ended up calling Rob again. It was one of those I got to go to Montreal and shoot the Tea Party. So I just went and knocked on Rob's door. I never even phoned him. I would just always go across the hall and knock on the door. "Hey, Rob, you want to go to Montreal and shoot the Tea Party? When? This weekend." "Oh, I'm not doing anything."
That's awesome.
Okay. And so we did. And that was the Edges of Twilight record.
How did you go from drummer band to graphics? What was that transition?
Well, I always designed, every band I was in, I was designing a logo for it. But I think I might have said to you earlier, maybe I was saying it to SA, I never thought it was a career, and nobody ever said this is a career. Art was something that you got beat up for, for being artsy. I did many times. And it's sort of something you do in your spare time. And even as a guilty kind of thing, I thought, well, I can't possibly make a career out of doing something that just comes naturally. I always like to draw. If I trace it way back, I can go to high school and say, I actually convinced my high school art teacher to make album design a regular assignment.
Oh, yeah?
Well, because she was confiding in me one day that, how do I get kids, they take art, but then they don't actually want to do the art. They don't want to do the assignments. I said, why don't you make it something interesting, like let kids design an album cover for their favorite band? Well, that's a great idea. So that became an assignment.
Oh, that's cool.
Now, then I wasn't thinking this is a career. And it was just, I don't know, I had a kind of epiphany at some point where I realized, well, somebody has to do this. So why not me? I was really into, one of the bands I really liked when I was younger was Yes. Mm-hmm. And every Yes album cover had this fantastical, surreal landscape, well, I like to draw like that. And I thought about it for a long time, but nobody ever encouraged that as a career. Nobody ever. In bits and pieces, I can go back in time and think, well, maybe that's what my art teacher was trying to say about, I had an art teacher when I was 15 or 16. She said to me, what do you think you want to do when you grow up? I thought what she wanted me to say was, I want to be an artist like you, like a fine artist. She said, well, you be prepared to starve unless you can think of a way to monetize it. And I didn't really, my 15-year-old, 16-year-old self didn't know what that meant.
Sure.
But then, time goes by and I'm collecting all this advice. And then I just thought one day, why am I, I'm working as a waiter to support myself as a musician. Why am I waiting on tables, which I hate doing? I just want to throw people's lunch in their face after a while. And then I'm having to take a lot of time off of my job to design logos for bands or
Sure.
create a t-shirt for this band who are friends of mine. Well, why don't I just do that? If this is without even trying, this work is coming to me. So what if I actually tried? What if I just started telling people I'm a graphic designer? I really wasn't comfortable using that term to describe myself because I thought, well, you're supposed to sort of have some credentials or something, right? Like you have to study it or something.
Sure.
I can't possibly do that just because I want to. And then, so I hadn't really quite made the transition yet to being a graphic designer until I went to see a friend of mine who had gotten a job as a label manager for a BMG distributed label. Mm-hmm. It was when Michael Timmons from the Cowboy Junkies started his own label called Latent Recordings, where BMG basically just let him sign a bunch of strange artists that they didn't know what to do with. Let's put them on Michael's label. So my friend, Scratch was his name, was hired to be the label manager, and they gave him a little closet for an office, and he was managing a bunch of independent bands on the side. He asked me to come and talk to him. Why don't you come to my work and I'll talk to you about it here. I think that was maybe the first time I'd ever been in a record company office. And so I'm in my, early 20s. So I go to meet Scratch at the BMG, and I was actually shocked that the environment seemed so much like an insurance company or something. It was really stale. I don't know. I sort of expected there would be like musicians hanging out, like in every corner. They'd be playing guitar and, there'd be loud music playing. And no, it was very quiet. It was almost like, shh, you're here to see who? So I go to see Scratch, and he says, I'm kind of busy for like 10 minutes. Can you just amuse yourself? Like go to the bathroom or something, or just wait in the waiting area, read some magazines or, whatever. I said, okay, fine, whatever. And so I was just kind of wandering around. I was kind of surprised that nobody asked me what I was doing. And I went around, it was like a blind corner. And I went around the corner and I literally collided with really somebody who worked there. And she had just come from the photocopying room, and there was an explosion of paper.
Oh no.
And I think I might have made a noise like, ah! And she made a noise worse than that. And then I bent down to try and help her pick up the papers, and we both cocoa bonged each other in the forehead.
Another movie moment.
Yeah.
Here.
And she said, just stop. Who are you? What are you doing here? Well, I'm Patrick Duffy. And she said, and what do you like? What do you do? What are you doing here? Oh, I said, I'm a graphic designer. Like, I don't know if I'd ever actually used that term. And she said, oh, graphic designer. I need a graphic designer. Right place, right time kind of thing. So can you come and see me after you talk to Scratch? I said, what the hell with Scratch? I'll just come and talk to you right now, because I saw opportunity.
Sure.
And so I went to her office. I mean, this is, I'm not calling myself a graphic designer. I might be doing some design and making $50 here and $100 there. But this is like the big time. Somebody's actually accepted that I'm a graphic designer. And I went to her office, and it was like if it was a movie, the scene would be that the door closes and a low minor chord happens, because I look around and the room is covered in country paraphernalia. So at the time, I hated country music.
Okay.
Hated it with a passion. In fact, I had just quit a band that had been kind of a roots rock band, but the singer, who was the leader of the band, had announced he wanted to go in a hardcore country direction.
Right.
At which point I said, see ya. I'm not playing in that kind of a band. I'm just not going to do it. That's not who I am. And he was really upset with me, but I don't care. I'm leaving. So this is like a week later. I suddenly find myself in a record company office. I'm inside the beast,
Yeah.
And it's all country stuff around me. And I'm like, okay, just keep your mouth shut. Just ride this out. Could be a big paycheck here. And I was tired of being poor and hungry. And she's just started babbling to me about country music. And she said, oh, have you heard the new Alabama record? No, I didn't get that one yet. Oh, here. And she gives it to me.
Oh, wow.
And, this, long story short, the CDs just start stacking up on the desk in front of me. Oh, you better listen to this. Oh, the new Alan Jackson record is out. It's his greatest hits. You must have that. I'm like, no, I didn't get that yet. Well, and each time she gives me a CD, she's telling me, oh, I'm going to need about a dozen ads print ads for this, and you do print ads, right? Oh yeah. I don't know anything about print ads. And I'm going to need an in-store poster. You know what an in-store poster is? Oh, I'm thinking it's a poster that's in a store. Sure. And then she at one point says to me, just a rough tally. How much do you think all of this work that I've just mentioned is going to be worth? And I hadn't written down any of it or anything. I said, I have no idea. I said, I'm thinking it's going to be like $6,000. I'm just pulling a number out of the air. She goes, 6. I thought, oh, too high. She goes, I was thinking it might be more like 16. Oh, 16,000. Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah, 16,000. So I just went home and I thought, well, I guess I'm a graphic designer now.
Wow.
I quit my job as a waiter. I decided, I didn't care if I ever did any more work ever. I'm going to make 16 grand. And then the funny thing is that at that point, I don't care about not playing anymore. I'm going to be a graphic designer now. As I take all these CDs home, I'm thinking, well, I better listen to this, because I do think that the artwork has to reflect the music.
Absolutely.
Because that's my earliest experience with music, is the cover. Like Elton John, Yellow Brick Road. I remember poring over that artwork as I'm listening to it. Pink Floyd, The Wall, looking at the artwork.
Yeah, because you come from the vinyl days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's part of the experience. The artwork is part of it. And so I get asked a lot by people these days, do you think it's important to hear the music before you design something? Absolutely. Because I want it to be appropriate and I want it to fit. Like it fit for me when I was 13 years old. And so I put on the first CD on the stack was Alan Jackson's Greatest Hits. I didn't know who the hell Alan Jackson was at the time. Is this guy got enough material to have a Greatest Hits? I don't know. So I put it on. Well, the first song, I remember it very well. The first song on that record was Don't Rock the Jukebox.
Oh, yeah.
Which I know well now. At first, I thought it was hilarious. I put it on, and I noticed something at that moment about country music. A lot of country songs give you a warning that there's a country song coming up, because there'll be like an arpeggio.
Yeah.
And it's like a fiddle maybe, or if it's a fiddle, it might do a 2 count. Dun, dun, dun. Then the song starts, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or in the case of Don't Rock the Jukebox, it's a descending arpeggio, diddle, 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 dun, full stop. Don't rock the jukebox.
I remember that, yeah.
And as soon as he said that line, I burst out laughing. But then I'm listening to it. And so going back to my dad, sort of introducing me to swing music, that song swings. It's really got a really good swing.
Yeah, it does.
The drumming is really lively, and the recording was really good too. I really like the sound of the drums and all the instruments. Really good separation of the instruments, And I found myself turning it up. And by the time he gets to the second chorus, I'm singing right along with him. I know exactly what he's going to do.
Really?
He's going to be another full stop, and he's going to go, don't rock the jukebox. So eventually I'm listening to that record as loud as I would listen to Queens of the Stone Age,
Wow.
It's really loud. And then I can hear this bang, 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 bang. At first I thought it was my neighbors, who must have thought I was insane. Suddenly Patrick's listening to country music at AC/DC volume. And I realized, it's the door. So I went to the door, opened the door. It's the guitar player, the leader of the band that I just quit because I didn't like country music.
Oh, my.
And he's standing there with a really smug look on his face. And I went to say, because it was kind of like getting caught with my pants down.
Sure.
I went to say something, and he went, and he made me wait until the song was over. And then he crossed his arms and he said, I think now would be a really good time for me to talk to you about rejoining my country band. And I did.
Oh, wow.
I did. I went back to, I said, I don't care. I don't want to be famous anymore. I'd like to play the drums. If you want to play stuff like this, that swings like this, I'll do that. I just don't want to play my dog died, my pickup truck broke, everything's horrible.
Yeah. You want to have a party.
I want to have a party.
Yeah.
I want to have fun on stage. So I ended up playing with him for probably another 2 years.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of people came and went through that band that went on to, our band seemed to be, it was called Miguel Salas and the Matadors. And a lot of people came and went through that band that went on to bigger things. Colin Cripps, who now plays with Blue Rodeo.
Yeah.
He was in that band for a while.
Oh, really?
Michelle McAdory, who was involved with Colin Cripps for a while, went on to form the band Crash Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
signed.
That's right.
You know, it was like one person after another. Laurie Yates, a relatively well-known country singer now, she went on to sign a deal with Virgin. I mean,
Wow.
it was just a clearinghouse for musicians who were going to go on to bigger things. And we kept thinking, well, that's going to happen to us. And then it just never did. But that was sort of, long answer to your question.
It's all good.
I just decided if you want to be something, you just say that that's what you are. And then you just be it.
Yeah, you wake up every morning and you do it.
Yeah.
That's what you do now. That's cool. That's really cool. What inspired, like, so obviously listening to the music, but what else inspires you to come up with these pieces of art?
It's funny because I just got asked that earlier today. Because part of the reason I'm in London, well, I mean, I came here to do this, but kill two birds with one stone. I have a new client in the city. It's a punk rock band called Full Throttle.
Yeah. Okay.
I designed a poster for them, which is one of my favorite things to do. I do it at like a super discount because I know bands don't have any money to pay somebody to design, not my rates, to design posters for them.
Sure.
So I have a deal where I'll do it for $150, but I get to do whatever I want, and you don't get to say shit about it. Like, I design what I want. So I got asked, well, how do you come up with these ideas, like these crazy, nutty ideas? I just kind of try to go to a place in my mind where I just let everything go. And I might have, just from listening to the music or the kind of band that it is, I mean, the Full Throttle thing, they're kind of like a punk rock band. They're like a noisy, lively, young, full of piss and vinegar kind of punk rock band. Well, I remember what that's like. And I remember the kind of artwork that I always associated that with. So I just kind of start free associating. And in that situation, that's how it goes. And then I just start Googling weird stuff. Like in that the process for that most recent thing I did was I had this idea about, like, the Monty Python style of illustration.
Yep.
Well, I was a big fan of that, which my dad got me into. And so I just started thinking of absurd things. Like I was thinking of a hand coming in and like picking somebody's head off of their shoulders and like there would be like tentacles coming out of it. And what if the tentacles were like guitar cables,
Oh, wow.
with like 1/4-inch jacks and, and then it mutated into something completely different.
Right.
It just, I don't know. Sometimes this stuff just comes to me and the only explanation I have for it is that I think it's kind of like if you're a songwriter or if you're a creative person in general, if you're a baker, you just have ideas just come to you because that's just your normal state. And then you just have to take the idea. There was a long time ago, I remember a guy from a band called The Wonder Stuff was asked how he came up with his ideas for songs. And without hesitating, he said, "It's like a moth in the room at night. You know it's there, and occasionally it flutters past your face, and you can hear it or feel it. You can't quite capture it, but that's what songwriting is. It's capturing the moth and turning it into something." So I don't know. I would say that's what it is for me. It's capturing the moth. Or in other cases, it's the band has a very clear idea about what they want to do. The Tea Party, for example, that Edges of Twilight record turned into something completely different than what they wanted to do originally. So this is, every situation's different, but the Tea Party had this idea that they wanted to completely, faithfully, flawlessly recreate the cover of Joy Division's Closer album.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to everybody, but the front of the Closer album is like a funeral scene from like an old Flemish painting or something. And so the Tea Party wanted to completely recreate this, like whatever was involved in costuming or props or
Wow.
And instead of saying, well, on the Joy Division cover, it doesn't even say Joy Division, it just says Closer. And so this was their idea, is that it would just have the title of the album. It would be literally the Joy Division album redone, which I loved because I was a huge Joy Division fan. And I love the idea of that they weren't taking themselves too seriously, that they were going to do something so over the top. But when I went to the director of marketing, who knew that I'd met with the band, so again, this is when I'm at EMI, she says, "So how did it go talking to the Tea Party?" "Oh, it went great. They got this great idea. So I tell her the idea, and she just gives me this look, and she goes, let me get this straight. You want to do an album where we don't say the name of the band on the cover. You're ripping off somebody else's artwork. It's in black and white. It's stark and unsellable. And that's what you want to do. And you told the band they could do this? I said, I thought I had the authority to do that. I'm the art director. She said, you do not, and we will not. You will come up with a different idea. And you will give it to the band. So it became something different. But that's, sometimes it's people saying, I don't know what I want. Just come up with something. And those people sometimes are very hard to please. It might take me literally 20, 30 tries to present them with something that they go, yeah, I like that.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a photo. One of the things that came up on screen there at one point was the first album I did for Susan Glukark.
Oh, yeah.
That was when EMI was committing themselves to promoting Indigenous music. So Susan was going to be kind of the poster child for that. I art directed that shoot. That's one of the few jobs I did where my guy Rob didn't shoot it. It was Denise Grant, who's a notable photographer, and fantastic. She shot that, and I remember at the time Susan saying she wanted to wear this like simple headdress that her grandmother had made, and it was important to her. And I listened to the record, and it's a bit dark in places. It's talking about suicides on the reservation, and it's dark, and so I thought, okay, the cover should be something fairly introspective then. She should look thoughtful. But the record company, like most record companies, they wanted like a smiling artist shot, like a high school yearbook thing. And I said no. And when I went to review all of the shots with Susan, her management, and the record company, there was a pile of contact sheets we used to look at. It sounds quaint now. Now we just look at thumbnails online. But in those days, it was contact sheets printed. And there was a stack of them. They said, oh, we're not, these are rejects. We're not looking at these. Well, because of the kind of guy I am, I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at these then. And I saw that shot and I thought, I don't know what it is. I can't tell you. It's hard to explain to you what I think a cover is.
Sure.
But I feel like I just know it when I see it. And I saw that shot. I said, that's the cover. And they did not like my decision at all. And there was a big argument. There was a fight. And lots of insulting words like, you don't know, Patrick, what's involved in marketing a record. You're young and, you'll learn about this. And I found that all really condescending, which I hated. And that just made me get my back up even more. And we did fight about it for half an hour until Susan said, isn't Patrick's job to guide us through this process? Isn't that his title? He's the art director. I think we should listen to Patrick. And I agree with him. I think that's the cover of the record. So that became the cover of the record, and I won my first ever design award for that cover.
Amazing.
Yeah. So vindication.
Yeah, well.
Which is, like that.
It was, it's the energy behind it all, right? And the fact that the artist identified with it too is cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the fact that it won an award, I don't think it's the best thing I've ever done or anything, but it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And I just thought it spoke to what the record was all about.
Yeah,
and I think to this day, I still run into Susan occasionally. Very friendly with her. I have the utmost respect for her. She's still very active musically.
She is, yeah.
She's a spokesperson for her community.
She just put out a new record not that long ago.
Yeah, and I'm sad that I haven't been able to work with Susan again. That's the funny thing is like, more than I'd like to think about, really. I've won awards for designing things for people, and then I don't get the call to do it again. And I can't possibly know what all the circumstances are, why that happens.
Sure.
Maybe people found me difficult to
politics.
to
maybe
deal with. There's always politics involved. I am the kind of person I will push back. If I don't think it's not like I need to win the argument or I need this this thing I designed and I spent 20 hours working on. I need this to be the cover. No, in the end, it's your record. And I really sincerely want you to be happy with it. I want you to be proud to show it to people. If you're not, then I didn't do my job. But I think there are cases where I push, like I will defend an idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some people don't like that.
So the elephant in the room, which I got to ask, because you're one of the few people I get to ask this to that it will potentially affect.
Uh-oh.
How does AI affect what you do?
Oh my God.
Because I have to imagine that that's something that you're thinking about.
I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm opposed to it.
Yeah, I get that.
Everything I've seen kind of offends me in a way, because I think it's taking a critical component of the process out, which is it's an emotional thing. It's a
human thing.
It's a human thing. As a designer, if I'm going to design something for you, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to have a lot of conversation with you. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what you like. Do you like Ritz crackers? Do you like jalapeno pepper cheese? Where do you like to vacation? What kind of music were you first inspired? Like, I want to know all these things. I want to get inside you. And maybe it sounds a bit airy-fairy that I want to do. Like, why can't I just collect a paycheck and just move on? But I like to build relationships. I really do like to build relationships with people. There's a lot of artists who I work with who, it's a first-time thing. But I'm hoping it's the beginning of something, not just a one-off.
Sure.
So there's a lot of emotional investment in that, and there's a lot of intelligence gathering. Now, defenders of AI could say, well, that's what AI does. You feed it all of this background, and it presents you with something that it interprets from all this background that you gave it. But it's a robot. It's still a robot, And all of the movies that we've all seen where robots end up showing themselves to be just robots.
Yeah.
That's what happens. There's no emotion. And I don't mean to sound alarmist, but it's like the robots are taking over, and I don't like that.
I think what's interesting with your particular situation with AI is that, you kind of hit the nail on the head where, you feed it information. Well, okay, but who would, in your particular case, who would be feeding it that information? It would be the record label, it would be the artist. So they wouldn't have your journey, your perspective, your, all the years of you collecting vinyl. And like case in point, the poster that you just made for this punk band, you specifically referenced years ago the punk album that inspired, that you associated with those records from back then.
Right.
Well, they wouldn't have that perspective from you inserted into the AI because you wouldn't be in the equation.
No.
And so you're right. The process, which is human, but it's human because you're human and you're the art director, so to speak, not the AI.
Right.
So yeah, I think that while you can plug a bunch of stuff into AI, that wouldn't have been Susan Aglukark's cover. No. Case in point.
No, right? It would not have been.
And yet you won an award, your first award for it.
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, it's also interesting that I was so at odds with the establishment, I guess, when that record was nominated for an award. I didn't even know there was a Country Music Awards. I didn't, I was still not entirely embracing country music. I didn't know there was a Country Music Awards. I didn't know I'd been nominated. I got a voicemail from one of the people from EMI who was at the awards saying, Patrick, I don't know if you're here at the awards or not. You are nominated. Just in case you win, are you going to be here to accept it, or do we have to figure out who's going to go on stage and accept it for you? And then the next beep. Then the next message I get is, well, congratulations, Patrick, you won. Well, thanks for letting me know in advance. I mean, I never got invited.
Wow.
And then it happened again.
Really?
Yeah, for another record for EMI for the Rankin family.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So I win again. Again, I didn't know anything about the awards. I didn't know there was such a thing. I thought when I did start to look into it, I thought, what is this, like 60 people at a Legion somewhere? I had no idea. It's like, it's a big deal. There's a lot of people. There's an entire industry happening here that I'm not embracing. I'm not. So for those that don't know, that's so CCMA, the Canadian Country Music
Association. So I saw in a bio online. So were you working for them at one point?
I was the CCMA's art director for about 13 years.
Okay. So you went from not knowing about the awards and not being invited.
Well, and I think the reason that I became popular I became the country guy.
Right.
I was
which all of this, now that everyone knows the backstory to your country journey,
it's
hilarious.
I mean, it's just one of those things, like so many things in my life, it just kind of fell in my lap. I'd like to think that the reason that I became popular within that genre as a designer is I take a different approach, like, because I didn't come at it as a country fan. I don't care about what it is that it's sort of informs my design in general. I care enough about what other people are doing. I want to be aware of it.
Sure.
You know, if you're an EDM artist and you ask me to design an album for you, I want to see, well, what's happening in EDM right now? But then almost as quickly as I absorb what's happening, I want to turn it on its head.
And do your own thing.
And do my own thing so that it's different. So it has to, I think the artwork has to speak to the audience on an emotional level.
Absolutely.
And I think the average person, they don't, there's a famous expression, I don't know art, I just know what I like, or something like that. Most people are like that. They don't want to dissect it. They don't care they just know, do I like this or not? You know?
Yeah, either vibes with you or it doesn't.
If somebody wants to buy a new Mustang, they don't care who the designer is.
No, they don't even know half the time.
They don't care what his name is, where he comes from, whether he's French or Chinese or whatever. They just are from Argentina. They just want to, do I like this car? Do I like the sound of this car when it starts up? That's it. So I know that. I'm aware of that as I'm designing things. But what I'm hoping that in my bio, I think I say this, I haven't looked at my bio for a long time, but what I'm trying to do with my design is get a gut reaction.
Sure.
I just want people to respond to it. Hey, I like that. Or, hey, that's cool. If that's all I get in response, oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah, you're on the right path.
You know? So I think that's maybe what made me successful in that particular category of designing for country, and ultimately finding that's my niche.
And now CMAO, right?
Yeah, so that came to me through my relationship with
CCMA?
The CCMA.
Okay.
Around the time that I became divorced from the CCMA, it got to the point for me where I'm no longer a member of that association.
Right.
I wish them well, and I'm happy that they're promoting country music.
Absolutely.
Nationally.
Yeah.
Bravo. I sincerely mean that. I'm glad there is an association that's doing that. I was quite pleased that my peers would put my name down.
Yeah.
My peers suggested it. And then it's a popularity contest in the end, but if enough of my peers, and presumably a lot of people I don't even know, who just saw an album that I did for Gord Bamford or Brett Kissel or whatever. In fact, that's the last one that I won for Brett Kissel.
Yeah.
I won it in London. My daughter was at the awards with me for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yes, this is what I wanted. I'm coming home. I'm winning an award for an album I really liked.
Now, was that at the convention center?
Yes.
I did lights for that show.
Did you?
I was.
Yeah?
I was the lighting guy on that show.
Maybe you probably don't remember my speech, but it was one of those speeches where I was talking so long that the music started to come up.
I think I actually do remember that.
And I was like, I'm not done yet. I got some things to say, okay? And I'm going to say them.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
And I did. And you know what was really gratifying for me in that situation was Steve Kane, who was the president of Warner. I don't know where he was sitting in the room, but he crossed the floor to come over to me as I left the podium to give me a big hug and thank me personally.
Wow.
And that really meant something to me, I don't need awards. I'm not in it for awards. I like the attention, sure. And I like to receive accolades from my peers for a job well done. And yes, I display all 9 of those trophies. They collect a lot of dust.
Well, they mean something to you because the emotional side of it sounds like to me like that sounds like what the thankfulness to Steve, right? It's the connection side of it too.
So how did that mutate into working for the
CMAO.
Country Music Association of Ontario, CMAOntario? I got a call from the executive director, Verl Mobbs, who encouraged me to run for the board. And I was like, well, I don't know. I ran for the board of the CCMA one year, and it was a disaster. I made a fool of myself, and it probably wasn't the right time. I probably would have been a terrible board member. So Verl calls me. She encourages me to run for this board. Again, I didn't even know there was a Country Music Association in Ontario. I really don't think I knew about it. But Verl I knew from the CCMA. Verl had previously worked for the CCMA. Verl also worked for CMW, Canadian Music Week, who I also work for. I'm a consulting art director to CMW. And it's sort of like wherever Verl went, I went with her. I was her guy. I was her.
Sure.
Well, apologies to my wife. I was Verl's designer.
Sure.
And the reason she wanted me to run for the board was because she thought, well, it'd be pretty useful to have a designer on the board. So that was in London that year. And earlier that day, my brother, one of my brothers who lives here, said, "Are you going to have time while you're in London to get together, or like what's with this convention you're involved with?" I said, "Well, if I'm running for the board. If I win, I'll probably be busy. I don't know what my duties will be, but I'm sure that's going to involve me being busy. But if I don't win, I'm probably going to have time on my hands." So they held the election, and in those years, what they did was they would take a vote immediately in a meeting of the general membership. They would count the votes immediately, and within the hour, come back and say, "Here's our new board." They came back and they were reading the names off of the newly elected board alphabetically, and when they got to F, I realized, oh, there was no Duffy in there, so I guess I'm out. I guess that didn't work. I was disappointed, but I thought, I didn't want to be on the board anyway. So I went outside. I smoked in those days, so I went outside to have a smoke, called my brother. I'm on my phone with my brother, and I'm saying, so I didn't win. And then this volunteer comes up to me and goes, "Are you Mr. Duffy?" "Yes." She goes, "The board would like to see you." Oh. What did I do now? What did I say? I'm notorious for shooting my mouth off. What did I say? So I went in. They were all assembled. They had these silly grins on their faces. And Bruce Good was the president at that time. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, so you didn't win election, but we were all really kind of counting on you being on the board, and because your skill set would be really useful. So we have the power to appoint board members. We've never used it before, so we're going to use it for the first time. If you will still join the board, we'd like to appoint you to the board."
Wow.
So I thought, well, that makes me feel almost even better.
Yeah.
You're going to ignore a democratic election and just make me? So I did. I said, yeah, sure. And I've been on the board ever since, and I'm pleased to say that I've never had to be appointed again. I've run for election, and I've been elected, and I'm now the second vice chair of the association.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So years earlier, going back to the earliest part of this conversation, I never would have imagined myself in this position.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that I'm bringing something unique to the table. I have a different sort of approach, and every year my job now is and it's all volunteer. It's a lot of unpaid work, but I have to come up with a theme and a visual identity for the awards and conference and festival every year.
Oh, wow.
So
and there's one coming up
in May 31st, June 1st weekend in Mississauga this year. So we move around, different place every year. This year we'll be in Mississauga for the first time, which might sound like an unlikely location but they approached us. And Mississauga, it's another music city, I think.
Yep, it is. They won the award for Music City of the Year.
Okay,
at
so
CMW last year.
And I've already become involved with the Mississauga Music office of the city. I design for the Mississauga Music Awards every year.
Nice.
And I've designed directly other things for music, Mississauga Music.
Mississauga Music, yeah.
Yeah. So they courted us. We like to go places where people seem to want us.
Yeah, that's important.
London, we've been here a couple of times.
Yeah.
We'll probably come back to London at some point.
Yeah, we love having you guys. It's great.
And it's a music city, and the London office is really receptive to us. So I'm sure we'll come back here. Hamilton is another place where I think we have one more. We have a deal where we, I think London actually initiated this deal where we make a 4-year, we sign a 4-year contract. The first year we're in London, then the next year we skip London, then the third year we come back to London, and London actually pays us for all 4 years.
Oh, wow.
To guarantee that we'll come back.
Oh, wow.
And so I think we created a similar arrangement or agreement with Hamilton. So we have 1 year left on the Hamilton agreement, and I think it's a similar deal that we have with Mississauga now. So we have a major awards show,
Yeah.
a conference, because part of our mandate is to educate and provide useful information to our membership, and then a 2-day music festival.
Amazing. Do you have to know, like, because there's a lot of people watching this that are sort of just getting into the business or looking to get into the business. Do you have to know someone in the CMAO to get in and know and become part of it or become nominated, or how does all that work?
Well, at the sort of entry level or junior level, you can just become a fan member.
Okay.
I think it's $25 a year or something. And that just puts you in the loop. You get notifications from us about when things are happening, because in addition to doing the big annual event, we also do smaller events throughout the year. We do a couple of different Christmas concerts. And I think I'm going to get crucified for this for not knowing, especially because I'm a vice chair. I think we do 4 other events throughout the year. Yeah. It's, the whole mandate of the association is to promote country music by Ontario artists, to create opportunities for our artists to perform, make money, spread their message,
sure,
be in front of people. So no, you don't have to know anybody. You have to become a member other than a fan member. You have to be actively engaged in the industry. And all that means is you work for a record company, you're a publicist, you're an agent, you're an artist manager, you're an artist yourself, you're a singer-songwriter. Any role that you play in the industry that you can say, yeah, I work in the industry, then you're eligible for membership. And membership even then is pretty cheap. And I'm really wanting to encourage membership.
Yeah.
We don't survive based on our membership, because we don't charge that much to become a member. It's really just about keeping you in the loop then.
Yeah, connecting people together.
Yeah, and making you aware of the opportunities that we have.
Absolutely.
So it's not just, and we have received some criticism lately, especially. It seems to be coming now more than ever, where people have accused us of favoritism towards certain artists, only showcasing the same artist over and over again, which is completely false. If you're one of those people who's been criticizing us for that, and really all you need to do is look at the lineups for the last several years. Obviously, if I hate to mention specific names because then it's going to look like favoritism, but Elise Saunders, let's say. This seems to be Elise's year. She's got a great song out right now that she co-wrote with Jason Blaine, called Never Have I Ever. It's an amazing song.
Yeah, it is.
And, she's probably, she's climbing the charts. I think this is going to be Elise's year. Now, has Elise played on our show before? She's done a showcase before? Yep. But it's happening for her. So clearly we're going to reward that. And the people that come to the show are going to be expecting to see Elise Saunders if she's got a top 10 hit or something. I don't know if it's a top 10, but.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that's favoritism. I mean, when I had in episode 4, I had Brad Gibb on, who used to do.
I saw part of that. I didn't watch the whole thing,
and we talked about that, right? Like I asked him, how do you get on radio? And he said that. He said you need the whole package, or you need. He explains. I mean, go watch the episode because he explained it so much better than me, but. Essentially, you have to have a certain percentage of the total package, right? Like you either have to have, a plan and great artwork and a great look and, and the music can be good, but maybe not great, but they'll still take you on because you have all, you have all the rest of the stuff and you have a vision and you have stuff in the can ready to go.
And you have a team of people actively engaged.
But if it's going and the songs are good and you're getting radio play, it's timing, and sometimes you can't even explain it. Sometimes it's it's the team. I talk about that a lot, where you have a great team of people and they're all pushing for you, and and everything hits, and next thing you know, it's taken off, and so I don't necessarily think that there's favoritism. I just think that some people have the right things and the right thing at the right time with the right people, and everybody's moving in the same direction.
Yeah,
because that can derail a project real quick. You've managed artists. I've managed a couple artists. That's the biggest thing to derail a project quick, is when everybody isn't focused on going in the same direction.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and there's a lot of work involved in that, a lot of coordination, and not always a lot of money to make that happen either.
No, not at all.
That's. I also I want to mention that for those who might be interested, besides becoming members, which I encourage you to do, if you're involved in the industry and you're not a member of our association, what's wrong with you? But when we do this, our awards show is a ticketed event. But even then, it's not that expensive. If you want to see the best of Ontario, and not just Ontario, I should point this out. We always include an out-of-province artist, because that just encourages cooperation with other provinces. Then you can be a big deal in Ontario, but you have no audience in Manitoba, or you have no audience in BC. So we try to incorporate out-of-province artists every year. There's at least one special guest, which makes some of our Ontario-based artists gripe and complain, like, well, shouldn't that have been a spot that went to an Ontario artist? I would have played that spot. Well, okay. But what we've done is we've actually created a network for our artists. We're actually building a bigger network of places that you can go.
Yeah.
So like on our website, we have a monthly spotlight for an artist, and it's not always an Ontario artist. I can't remember what the rotation is, but there will be an out-of-province artist, because again, we're trying to create this community.
Absolutely.
Between our association and all the other provincial associations, because that's just the nature of a community, is to cooperate with each other and help lift each other up, right? But when we have this weekend, the 2 days of outside, it's an outside festival, are free. So we try and pack as much entertainment into that outdoor stage as we possibly can. And we try and spread it out so that there's an emerging artist or a new artist or a showcasing artist, plus somebody who's a headliner to draw people. And that's something that people need to be reminded of, I think, is that when you see these shows, like, are you seeing the same people on TV all the time? Our show is not televised, but the Grammys or the Emmys or whatever it is, are we seeing the same people? Well, some of the same people are being rewarded because they're in that category of entertainer, but the show has to sell tickets and it has to sell advertising. And, you might think, and not you, but, you,
the audience,
the phantom you, might think, well, why don't you feature a lot more independent artists? And I am a huge booster of independent artists, as are many people that are part of my association. We're all involved with independent artists. But we have to also be aware that we need to sell tickets. And if we put on a show that was just nothing but independent artists, would enough people come to fill the Living Arts Center? I don't know. That's pretty risky.
Yeah. No,
if that could happen, that would be fantastic. But I don't know that we have that kind of situation.
Not exclusively. I mean, there has to be a couple of anchor things that are a draw, right? I mean, that's a given. I mean, look at any lineup at an arena or a big theater. If you got multiple acts, you need an anchor act to sort of, But at the same time, you guys are giving opportunity to independent artists.
Yeah.
Whether it's at the outdoor stage or whatever. And the membership can come, and the membership can be included. I was part of the CMAO when I was managing a country artist a little while back, and it was a great experience.
Who was that artist?
We'll remain nameless.
Oh, okay.
But Jay Allen was involved, of course.
Okay.
Another plug for Jay. But yeah, and it was a good experience for me with the CMAO thing. It was fun. It was fun checking it out and being involved and joining and you're right. You know, you're kept up to date on all the opportunities, which is fantastic. And so, you know, from someone who's gone through that process, it is a really cool thing to be a part of, and definitely a way to connect with people. You know, by going to the events and certainly the awards, and it's fun. But speaking of creating community, you also are involved at Harris and Durham.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you doing at those
So
places?
I teach courses in graphic design for the music industry
Okay.
at both institutions.
Yeah.
It's never far from my mind that it's kind of hilarious that I'm teaching at the post-secondary level when I don't even have a post-secondary education. I took some classes post-secondary level, but don't actually have any kind of diploma at all. In fact, so it started with the Harris Institute when I went to see John Harris, the president of the school.
Yeah.
I thought that I was going to see, he's got this school. It's kind of the same sort of thing as the Fanshawe College Music Industry Arts program. It's same kind of thing. Trebas does something like it. Metalworks had his school. I thought that I was going to see him. It's like, oh, there's this music school. I'm a designer for the music industry, so I'll probably do something for the Harris Institute. Maybe they need a new logo. I don't know what. So I thought this was like an interview for me to do some work. It was the most exhaustive portfolio showing I've ever had. Like every page, and this was back in the days when we used to actually show a physical portfolio.
Sure.
So every page, John Harris is going, okay, so now tell me about the process that went into this design.
Oh my.
Every single page. And at one point I'm looking at my watch thinking, I better get some work out of this because I've wasted way too much time here.
Wow.
And I'm happy to talk about my work, but anyway, at the conclusion, he said, well, you're very well spoken. You seem to know what you're talking about. Have you ever thought about teaching? I thought it was just a rhetorical question. Sure. I've done some lectures here and there.
Well, you've said yes to so much up until that point.
Yeah. So he said, okay, so then would you teach here? I think he had to ask the question about 4 different times in different ways before I realized, oh, he's actually offering me a job. And I said, teach here? I don't have a diploma. I don't, you need a BA or something, don't you? He said, well, to be a teacher, yes. But to instruct, you can instruct for limited hours, a limited number of hours and a limited number of students if you are an expert in your field, and you're clearly an expert in your field.
Yes.
So I said, well, there's a curriculum? He said, no, you write the curriculum. I thought, this is too good to be true. And I get paid. So I tell
it's
kids,
like you found that 16K deal all over
I tell
again.
influential 20-somethings what I think they need to know about the music industry and how design relates to that. And I get paid for that. And I determine what they learn. Yeah. When do I start? He said, you start, well, tomorrow, ideally. I said, tomorrow? I couldn't possibly start tomorrow. Next week then? Because we're sort of already into the term. So you'd have to be kind of condensing what should be a 14-week course into, well, at this point, like 6 or 7 classes.
Wow.
I said, I can do that. So I literally went home that day and kind of wrote lesson plans. And it started with teaching graphic design. I don't remember even what my course is called, graphic design for the music industry, I think. As I started that, he said to me, do you know anybody that could teach print production? Like, how do you actually turn the design into something that could be printed? Album packaging or posters or T-shirts. I said, yeah, I can do that. Okay, we're going to have you teach that as well. And then it expanded one more time to teach computer graphics.
Okay.
Just slightly different than just general conceptual things, but like actual hands-on physical. How do you use Adobe Photoshop? How do you use Adobe Illustrator? How do you create posters or album covers using that software? So it's now been, I think, 20 years since I've been at Harris. And And about 10 years ago, maybe, I got a call from a contact who was teaching in the music business management course at Durham College in Oshawa, a woman I've known for a long time, Marnie Thornton. She said, would you consider coming to Durham College and teaching the same sort of course here? And I said, no, I don't want to. I don't want to drive to Oshawa in the wintertime, because that's when it would be the winter session.
Sure.
Starting January 6th or something. No, I don't want to do that. Oh, we're really hoping that you would say yes. Well, I got my hands full with Harris, because there's a certain amount of time. It's not just the class time, it's the marking, it's the lesson time. And I'm constantly modifying to make sure that everything is current, reflect new technologies. Although I did announce at the beginning of this term at Durham College, anybody here expecting me to talk about AI, you're in the wrong place. I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about how to do things properly. It's like, I want to teach you about baking, but if you're here to learn about microwaving, then you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I got a call, I don't know, a month later, same person said, have you thought about that position at Durham College? I said, no, I haven't thought about it at all. As I hung up saying no to you a month ago, that's the last I thought about it. She said, oh, I was really kind of hoping you might change your mind. And by that point, quite honestly, the pay got bumped up a little bit. And I said, okay, now it's worth driving to Oshawa in the winter. So I've been there for about 10 years now, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I love teaching. I love sharing the knowledge. And my favorite moment really is seeing the light bulb come on over people's heads. I really like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't want to, get into it on every episode, but this is a good chance for it. Is I talk about tribal knowledge and the fact that there's a value to that knowledge, and the fact that a lot of young people with access to the internet and Google don't value that knowledge. They think that they can find it on their own. They don't have to learn how grandma's pancakes were made.
Right, yeah.
All that stuff, right? And what you're
doing.
doing.
That one of the ingredients was love.
Yes, exactly. and a pound of butter and a lot of sugar. But, but yeah, it's interesting, because what you're doing, especially with not involving AI, is you're literally passing down the tribal knowledge that you have, that you've acquired, that you've shaped,
and practical knowledge too, Ryan. Like I make a point of emphasizing that regularly in my class. The things I'm teaching you are not just like some textbook book learning stuff, theories, abstract theories. I'm going to teach you how to create a poster for a gig, because if you're going to perform as a musician, if you're going to do gigs, if you're going to manage artists that are doing gigs, you have to promote the shows.
Yeah, right.
And whether we're actually going on the street and hanging posters on the street, whether you do that or not, or whether you just do it as part of a social networking thing, you have to promote your shows. And if I was still involved in management, you're not still involved in managing. No. If I was still involved in managing, and I play with the idea every once in a while, that would be a condition under which I would decide whether I wanted to manage you or not, is how do you feel about promoting your own shows? And there are people, we run into this with CMAOntario, where we actually create templates for artists to be able to say, I'm playing CMAOntario this year. And so we give you the art, we give you the template, it's formatted for various social media. We give it to you and we just ask you, can you just send this out? Like, you're posting the sandwich you made yesterday. Could you just, or some weird, gift that you found. Like,
yeah.
So why will you just send this out promoting the show that you're doing with us? And certain artists are like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not.
Wow, that's bizarre.
They don't believe in blowing their own horn.
Self-promotion.
Yeah, and I learned that a long time ago, that you got to blow your own horn.
Well, especially in early days and on your way up, your core fans are connected to you.
Yeah.
Right? They're on your social media account.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, you absolutely have to let them know where you're playing.
And you can never just assume that people know that because it's an important show for you that everybody knows about it. You have to come right out and tell people sometimes, this is what I'm doing this Saturday. Get tickets, buy, you have to give them a call to action. Buy tickets, please. Because I don't know if a lot of people realize that certain events, if they don't sell a certain amount of advanced tickets, then it's assumed that it might not be successful and the show might actually be canceled before it happens because of lack of sales or lack of interest. And that happens all the time.
Sure.
In the industry. So all the more reason and there's just so much going on that you need to be able to tell people, like, I know you're learning about all these other things happening, but and I don't remember what the exact figure is, but I'm probably going to undersell it. But the average person sees like 2,000 messages a day now, because, and this if you scroll, everybody does. I see people doing it on the subway. I see people walking down the street going like this, going like this. So it's not hard to imagine that they might see 2,000. I mean, I have kids who are 20-somethings who, if an inkling of boredom starts to set in, if their mind drifts in the middle of watching a show that they want to watch, they'll bust their phone out and just start scrolling. And so the combination of watching the TV, Netflix, whatever it is,
sure,
their phone, walking down the street, flashing billboards, there's 2,000 messages a day that people could pay attention to. So we all develop our own filter, and we know in an instant whether we want to pay attention to this or not, which goes back for me to the whole making stuff look sexy. I want people to see this art and go, oh, what's that? That's cool. And I want them to linger. Even if they only linger for 3 seconds, that might be just long enough for them for an idea to get cemented in their mind.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you. Yeah. Where do you see, because, we got a lot of factors, right? So you have social media as a factor, you have AI as a factor, you have a lack of live music venues more and more all the time for places for people to play. So thank you guys for, creating places for artists to play. As I'm a huge advocate for that, because there's all the time I'm hearing about places shutting down, and usually condos going up.
Well, and this keeps you in business as well, right? Yours and your dad's business is reliant on live things happening.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And even my music store, Music City Canada, on artists having the vision of being an artist. Like, you said when you were young, you wanted to play rock music to become a rock star. And that's the dream that, whether it's Harris or whether it's Fanshawe or me, I mean, we're all trying to feed that. And if the kids don't see a path, like where do I go play? Mm-hmm. And I've had some interesting answers on some of the earlier episodes to that. Some people were even like, just go back to the old school and get a hall and start do your own parties, right? I think Bob Reed from Bob Noxious said that. And but where do you my question is where do you see music in Canada in your purview, in your world? Where do you see things headed? Like in country and anything?
I think there's always going to be an interest in going to see people play music. I don't think that that's ever really going to go away. I think external factors are at play when venues start closing. We got to think about a lot of different variables there. It could be that the guy running that club embezzled all the money, and that's why the club shut. Sure. It could be because that guy, his heart wasn't really in it after all. It could be because he got divorced. Like there's a lot of reasons why clubs might fail. My family's in the restaurant business. A lot of restaurants fail because you have the wrong staff, or because you couldn't weather the hard times, or whatever. There's a lot of variables. I have to believe that people are always going to want to go and see somebody get up on stage with a guitar, and sing some catchy tunes. I I see like one of the people who's sort of involved with our industry in general, but involved with the CMA Ontario, a guy named Dave Woods, does these singer-songwriter nights.
I've seen them advertised.
Right. So in
Yep.
Oakville and
Yep.
and Toronto, sometimes at the Dakota Tavern.
And he gets quite a few people out to perform.
Yeah, he's got an interesting cross section of people. He pays a lot of attention to emerging artists, pairs them up with more established artists. It's to his credit. There's a lot of variety, I think, in what he's doing, and he's giving a lot of people an opportunity to get up on stage. That to me speaks to the popularity of that situation, that people want to go and see. Like one of our more popular events when we do our big annual event is the Songs and Stories Night, where artists, and there's lots of variables in that, and Dave's thing is kind of like a variation on that, where artists tell you a little bit of story about the song. Here's a song I wrote, I was on a train on the way, and people like the story.
Absolutely.
They really do, They want to hear the story, and then you wrote this song about it. Oh, that's clever, Is that me? Is that my phone? Sorry.
That's all good.
So I think, and people will pay, God, how much are Eagles tickets? Like $1,000.
I just went to the final tour in Detroit, in Glenn Fry's hometown. And yeah, I got seats towards the back and they were like $350 US a piece or something.
For not good seats, right?
Definitely not 14th row or where you were.
But yeah, okay. So, and I don't want it to sound like I'm always sitting in the 14th row of things.
It's all good.
That's been very rare.
Yes,
that has happened.
fair enough.
Sometimes, I learned that all you have to do is ask, because the Stones, I think it was the Steel Wheels tour, or it might have been the Voodoo Lounge tour. I can't remember which tour it was. I'm not that big a Stones fan, but I was working for the record company, and I didn't even bother asking for tickets because I really try not to abuse that privilege. But I designed something, and then it was going to be printed in like record time. And I said to this person from the label, "How are you going to get the printer to print it that fast? It can't be done." And she said, "Oh, it will, because I got him 10th row tickets to the Stones." He's a huge Stones fan.
Oh, wow.
And I just sort of flippantly said, "Well, where's my Stones tickets? I designed this for you in record time." She goes, "Well, you didn't ask. Do you want to go? I'll send tickets over right now." And she did, by courier.
Wow.
A couple of hours later, Stones tickets showed up. Well, I was supposed to go. Actually, I was supposed to come out this way. I was supposed to go and visit my best friend in Glencoe. So I called him and I said, "Oh, Pete, bad news. I can't come this weekend." He's like, "Oh, you're canceling again." "Well, what's come up this time?" I said, "Oh, well, I got tickets to the Stones." He's like, "Oh, well, I can't compete. Who are you going with?" I said, "Well, I was hoping you might come, actually." So he ended up driving from Glencoe to Toronto.
That's a great phone call to get.
Yeah. And so I like to share the love if I can.
Sure.
But so I don't know. I think, it's people are still making records. I mean, we've heard for years now about how it's the end of the album. But artists, for the most part, major artists especially, like signed artists, are still releasing records, a collection of songs that are in an album cycle. And they might not do it any more often than every couple of years, but that's how they're recording and releasing songs still. Independent artists are releasing songs almost immediately. As quickly as they can write a song, record it, mix it, they're putting it out there and seeing what happens. The streaming thing, and we've all heard the stories. Artists make no money for doing that at all. So you have to perform now. You have to perform in order to see any revenue as an artist.
Yeah.
And you have to have merch. You've got to have T-shirts, toques, booty shorts, coffee mugs, whatever your audience is into, grinders, whatever,
Sure.
Make your own rolling papers, You have to think of different sources of revenue now. And we do things now that we never did before, like house concerts but that goes back to the live thing still. It's all about the live thing, and we're all trying to figure out how to get people to come to live shows, which is the least it's easier to get people to get off the couch and come to a live show than it is to convince them to buy a record. But certain genres, there's still, I can tell you in the last however many years we've been talking about streaming and downloading and going back to Napster, you know, there's never been a period of time in the last several years, other than in the middle of COVID, where I wasn't working on an album, at least one. And I'm working on more than one record right now. So and I mean like a record, like a physical vinyl has come back.
So that's an interesting thing. So I was going to ask you about that. So how do you see, like, how relevant is album art now relative to years ago? It's obviously, based on what you're saying, it's still hugely relevant.
It's still entirely relevant.
Because we've seen a huge vinyl surge, right? Like, I think the stat is that there's more vinyl being sold now than ever before in human history.
I mean, I don't know if that's true, but if you...
This is what I've been told by some people that... Yeah, fair enough. By some people who are in that world.
Well, the industry tried to make the album go away, the vinyl album go away, right? They forced compliance for people to buy CDs because it was more profitable for them to release music on CD. But there were, for some people, the vinyl album never went away. It never went away for me. It wasn't part of the release package anymore. You know, they just stopped releasing most stuff entirely on vinyl. But because it never really went away, it started bubbling up again. You know, it's like if you leave a pot boiling on the stove, you can put it on simmer. It's going to just keep simmering as long as there's something in that pot, you know?
It's interesting. I was just down in the States in Florida, and I was at a major box store down there. And I went by the electronics area, which is normally where you'd see the CDs, and there was no CDs.
Right.
And all the DVDs and Blu-rays were all in like the discount bins in the middle aisle, right? But there was a vinyl section. It wasn't massive, but it was also not the type of place you'd normally go for buying vinyl.
Right.
You know, so, but I was like, hey, look, there it is.
Well, when that starts happening, then you know it's happening, because a big box store like a Walmart or a Best Buy or whatever, they're not going to have vinyl in the store. They're not going to devote any floor space to that at all, unless it actually is selling.
Yes.
It has to be selling something in order for them to stock it. So I think it's become cool again. We've managed, and I don't know whether that's clever marketing or a shift in people's thinking, but the kids, you know, they think vinyl is cool.
It is cool. It's always been cool.
I think it's always been cool. I mean, for me, it's never, you know, it's like, you know, when I read, you know, the big color this year for fashion is black. Well, I've never not worn black. So, you know, me and millions of priests.
and almost the entire crew part of the music industry.
Yeah.
We all wear black.
It's, anyway, I think it's all about marketing, you know. There are people whose jobs are, you know, they're just devoted to trying to convince people to buy stuff, whether they need it or not. And I think things go cyclically, you know. So maybe vinyl will cool down again in a while, but then it'll come back. And there's tons of stores now selling vinyl.
We have, I think, I don't even know exactly the number, but for sure 3 or more vinyl, like dedicated vinyl music stores here in town.
Yeah.
Of a population of 400 and change.
Yeah.
1,000. So
I'm not surprised. I'm surprised there's not more than that.
Yeah, I think there is. Last I looked, I think Music Office here put up a listing, and I think I saw at least there was 3 for sure. I want to say the list, there was five or 6 maybe, but I think we lost one not that long ago. Someone was retiring and just didn't want to continue. So, you know, that happens. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of vinyl sales still happening.
So I think it's about delivering something that people want. And I think people, you know, as per the future of the industry, where's it going? I think the market for catchy tunes, played well, recorded well, telling interesting stories in the music is never going to go away. It just has to be marketed the right way. The venues are changing to accommodate these situations. I think if I was going to start out as a musician nowadays, I definitely want to be in the folky, rootsy country genre, because then you can play anywhere. You can just pick up your guitar and you can go and play in the corner of a room. You can do a house concert. And if you can string enough dates together, doing house concerts on top of doing clubs and doing coffee houses and that kind of thing, then you can have a career. And I know people in the industry who are involved in putting together packages. That's the other thing. I think you've got to put together a package that is appealing to people. So one of the artists that I work with, who's also a friend of mine, Jamie Warren, is putting together a package tour right now with Dwayne Steele and Beverly Mahood, doing a 90s country thing.
Oh, cool.
Why not? There's an audience for it. People who like country in the 90s, they're still alive and kicking. That's their favorite era of music. If you put a package together with attractive people writing catchy songs that were bona fide hits, people want to see that. They'll pay money to go and see that. But you have to, I don't mean to just keep repeating the same thing, but you have to present it in a way that's appealing. It's a show. You want people to leave the house, to get off the couch and come to this show. So
absolutely
make it something exciting. And I think, I don't know. I think, am I talking about anything revolutionary? No. But I don't think we need to, at a certain point, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think, sure, there's people that I know my kids, they love the idea that any song they can think of, they can just call it up on their phone right now, but they will rarely listen to the whole song.
Oh yeah. No, I know. I got a 5-year-old and she asks for my phone every day in the backseat of the car. And she turned on a Phil Collins song. She doesn't know what a lot of it is.
Right.
She just turns it on and she sort of listened to like the first, 2 to 4 bars and then went, Taylor Swift.
Yeah. So it's beholden on artists to write compelling, interesting songs that people will want to listen to. And that maybe, I still think, there's a certain audience for the physical product. They want to, like if you go to a show and you're super impressed by whoever is on stage, you kind of want to take them home with you.
Absolutely.
And you can't necessarily literally take them home.
No, obviously.
I mean, if you're very lucky, and you're a certain level of handsomeness, or, maybe you can take this person home. But so you have to take a piece of them home. And so that's why it's important to have a merch table, which is well lit. People can see it. Yeah. I used to say this all the time to artists I managed. You might mention at some point during the show, hey, by the way, we have albums and t-shirts and stuff for sale. Stop by the table. You just need to suggest things to people sometimes.
And if you're really starting off, say you'll meet them out there.
Yeah.
Artists
this is
do that.
The one thing that I think it's not exclusive to country, but country artists, for the most part, will hang around well after the show to sign anything that you want to come up to the table and you just want them to sign your arm, or you give them stuff that they can buy, like an 8x10.
Yeah.
People they'll buy that. If that's the cheapest thing on the table and that's all they can afford, well, that's fine. But that's, you're going home with 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 300, 400 bucks that you didn't have at the beginning of the night. And you've guaranteed the loyalty of those fans.
Well, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
You gave them the time of day.
Absolutely. Yeah, you created a connection with them, even more so than the music already did, right? It's a more of a lasting connection. Kind of like the wink that you got
from Tom Petty.
Tom Petty, right?
And I think it's just basic stuff, I think, but it's just give people value for the money, entertain them, let them know that you appreciate them, and that's the future. Maybe we need to return that as opposed to this faceless digital world, I don't know. I don't mean to sound like the old man of the sea. No. Grumpy old man sitting on the porch yelling at people, hey, you kids, get off my lawn.
No, man. Well, thanks for doing the teaching. Thanks for, carrying it on into the next generation.
I'm
man.
happy to.
But thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate having you.
Well, thank you.
No problem. All good. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the episode here with Patrick Duffy, Ryan from Music City Live. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for watching Music City Live. If you liked this episode, like the video. And for more clips and episodes, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to join the conversation by commenting below and visit us at musiccityliveshow.com.